OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
An unbelievably busy show for you this morning. We're going to talk with Andy Mitten, who was in Paris last night for Manchester United's last gasp victory against Paris Saint-Germain. We'll be asking Ali Donnelly from Scrum Queens if women's rugby is getting a fair crack after qualification for the Rugby World Cup, and Ireland's plans have been thrown into disarray after a qualification tournament was cancelled. We'll hear from the Kildare hurling boss, teacher and ex-Kilkenny goalkeeper David Herity. Clare's Tony Kelly will also talk to us about his excitement for the return of the championship, and we'll get the latest from the Ireland camp ahead of their European qualifier against Ukraine at 5 o'clock on Friday. We'll talk about that match and more with Lisa Fallon. We want to hear from you though. How's everybody feeling about the championship going ahead? 0879 180 180 is the number. We know that we've got loads of people watching around the world. We'd love to hear from you this morning as well. We'll be reading out your texts from far-flung places to keep us entertained. So hello and good morning, or good evening and good night, wherever you are. It's bang on 7:31. Let's bring you a taste from last night's show. We were joined by Sonia O'Sullivan and the inimitable Cian Lynch.
Okay, so we're turning to GAA now. Littlewoods Ireland are launching their Style Meets Substance campaign. It's their fourth year, Littlewoods Ireland, running as a top-tier sponsor, and the campaign this year is called Style Meets Substance. Limerick's Cian Lynch is part of it. There was a unique photo shoot in Patrickswell, Limerick, in his county kit, as well as some sportswear from Littlewoods Ireland today, which I'm sure you'll be seeing soon. Cian Lynch, good to talk to you. How's things?
Great, no, Joe. Delighted to be here.
Good to have you. Free gear from Littlewoods Ireland. That's a good day.
No, it was great. No, and as you said, it's Style Meets Substance, great initiative, and I suppose about bringing people together, bringing joy to people, especially everyone within the hurling kind of background. And I suppose especially now more than ever, people are looking for that bit of joy and that bit of togetherness, whatever way it may be. So I had my own new top on, so scrubbing up.
Delighted with himself.
Delighted.
So how's the form? These are obviously strange times. I should say as well, there is the small matter of Clare in a Munster quarter-final this Sunday. It is all going ahead despite the country heading into level 5. So how's the form? How are you feeling about all that?
Good, I suppose. Grateful is probably the word I'd use, that we're still able to go training and we're able to get out and play. And I suppose back to the mental side of things, it's massive for us players to keep going, but just for families and sports in general, it's something that they can hold on to now for the next few weeks. And even saw it last weekend with the football back, just it sparks new conversation and new topics to talk about the different games, and it's great. So grateful.
Yeah, it's probably a great word to use actually, because there's a full spectrum, I'm sure, out there. We saw that in the GPA vote, where some players weren't so sure and others wanted the protocols to improve, and others were gung-ho and desperate to get out there and do their thing. Like Bevan Duffy from Louth, the footballer, was talking over the weekend, and you know, he was one of those in the unsure bracket. He was saying lots of lads are doing different jobs, be it teachers or frontline, and lots of them live at home with their parents, elderly parents. And, you know, he felt the testing wasn't enough and all of these worries. And I think they're very understandable worries. And you hope too many guys aren't out there feeling stressful about this situation.
Yeah, I suppose, come here, like, it's very easy for us all to have an opinion, but it's just every household differs and every background differs, I suppose, and we need to be open to that as well. And I know I'm saying I'm grateful to be back, but other scenarios could be totally different. They're going home to a family member that might be vulnerable and might be isolating, so you just don't know. But I suppose just appreciating each other's opinions and appreciating each other's backgrounds, and whatever a person feels comfortable doing, we just all have to be open to respecting that. And I suppose for us personally, like, I know most county setups are doing everything right and by the book and as per the government and GAA guidelines, which is great, and it's a massive safeguard to go training knowing that, like, and being able to come home knowing you're sanitised, you wore your mask and you're driving on your own. So it's good. It's more stuff for the mindset, just to stay on the ball, you know.
I do think as well, I do suspect that if a player was unsure or uncertain about proceeding, that his team would be supportive. I don't think a fella would be pressurised. I do suspect people understand how serious it can be for different individuals.
Yeah, come here, like, that's obviously the fear with any player, it's just how people might take it. But I suppose, like, we're all mature enough and educated enough to understand what's going on and the harsh reality of it. And come here, if anyone doesn't feel comfortable, we will support each other and we will help each other in any way possible. And I think the word support is huge in the current climate, whether it's got to do with the GAA, but just in general, like, with the new restrictions, we just all have to look out for each other and stay in touch and be mindful that everyone is going through their own little bit at home as well. Like,
what's an average evening's training like then, Keane, with all the protocol?
I suppose it's driving back to Rathkeil or the Gaelic grounds, and you drive on your own, obviously. Whereas before you'd kind of carpool, but I'd go to five of us from Patricksville, and you're just going in, you're wearing your mask. You can't be all in the dressing room together. There's no showering, and everyone's just accountable. Like, and as I said, I go back to just we're all mature enough to understand our actions could affect not only ourselves, but it's the knock-on effect it has. So just being mindful of that, but just appreciating every moment we can to get out and train, and we can have the laugh when we're training, and then just take our minds off what's going on.
Yeah, almost like a weight coming off when you get onto the thing. Say, relax. What's the crack this Sunday at Thurles then? Will you all drive separately as well?
Yeah, I presume that's the way it'll happen. Just the way we've been going to train, and just drive in our own individual cars and get there and tag out probably whatever in the stand maybe and just out on the pitch. But look, that's something we've all kind of been doing anyway with the club championship, and not really changes there. So every county is on the same kind of level, and everyone knows what's expected of lads. We have to do it right. Like, at the end of the day, sport is brilliant and hurling's a great outlet, but we have to mind our families and the knock-on effect too. Like,
what impact, if any, do you think the no crowds will have on a championship match on Sunday and beyond?
I suppose you'd obviously miss them in the atmosphere and all that, but I suppose it's just as important for the fans to be able to watch it on telly as it is to be there in person. So, like, the club championships went down without fans and it went down great. So it's just, you just have to, as a player, you have to get on with it and do the best you can and let all those kind of side shows look after themselves. Like,
do you try and feed off a crowd when a crowd is there?
No, you try and just focus on the task at hand and focus on the game, I suppose, because you can't be dependent on someone in the crowd to get you going. Like, so it's just being focused, really.
And how is the fitness this year? So in comparison with a normal year in advance of championship starting May time, how's the body now? How's the sharpness?
You'd like to think we're fit anyway. No, like, being back at the club is massive, and we had a great foundation laid there with the club. I know we weren't as successful as we might have liked, but we get great training done, and it was nice to have a bit of continuation going into the county setup then and getting back on the horse and driving on. And look, everyone, as I said, everyone's on the same boat. Like, there's no team that's going to be that haven't been training. So we're all back at the same time doing the same thing. So it's just being mindful and grateful that we're able to get out and do it. How
has this year been for you? How was lockdown, for instance, across April and May?
Grand. It was, like, obviously the first week or two was kind of a novelty for everyone, not really know what was happening or whatever. But after a while, then perspective starts coming, and you start realising how much you actually miss the rushing and race, and how much you miss going training, and you miss meeting the lads. And I was working from home as well, and I used to just get up, go for an all morning walk, watch a bit of mass, and just set myself up for the day and just remain positive. Like, that's all we can really do, is just stay thinking positively and just looking out for one another.
And what was working?
Uni jobs there, it's in recruitment. So luckily enough, we were able to work away remotely and it was fine. And in the last few weeks then, we kind of went back in pods, kind of 2 or 3 days a week. So it was great, and they were brilliant, very helpful, if anything I needed personally or along those lines. So, and I went back and started the secondary teaching then in September as well. So it does all go.
Right, okay. And are you in teaching now?
Yeah, I'm doing the Masters there in Religion and Geography in NUIG.
Okay. Why teaching? What drew you to that?
I don't know, I think now more than ever, I think youngsters need guidance and need a bit of structure in their lives, and it's great that they're still in school and they have that to be able to get out and go out every day. But for me personally, it's nice to be able to help a kid along the way, whether it's in the classroom or just being that person they can offload stuff to. So, kind of it.
Right. And the summer holidays are nice.
Yeah, we can't say that though.
Did you have a teacher that you really liked growing up? Was there one that stood out?
I suppose, yeah, like in primary school there, we had Mr. Kieran Crowe and Mr. Paul O'Connor, and these were great kind of influential characters that would guide you in the right way. And I suppose going on to our school then, you would like some Mr. Niall Crowe, Mr. Niall Moore, like ex-Limerick hurler, these guys who just guide you, I know in a sporting front, but also in a faith front and just supportive manner. I know Mr. Pat Walsh there as well, who was currently reaches his hand out if I ever need anything in regards to the masters I'm doing. So they're all very good, and I'd love to be able to do that to some young fella or young girl, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely thought. I suspect a lot of the great teachers we've all had don't realise the impact that they have had on so many people, you know. They kind of take it for granted, or it's not like we ring them up and tell them years later, geez, I really appreciated all that.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we always kind of have that teacher we look back and say, geez, he or she was a great help.
Yeah. So you mentioned mass there, and you mentioned religion. That's obviously a big part of your life.
Yeah, it is. I think faith, like, I'm not one to be forced to religion on anyone, but I just think faith and having faith in something is huge, and especially in the current climate. I think a lot of the time we can always look to the negative side of things or the bleak side of things, but just have something to hold on to. And if it's saying a few prayers or listen to a bit of reflections on mass or something along those lines, a great way to stay grounded and stay in the here and now. And
have you always had a strong faith?
Yeah, I kind of have. Like, from a young age there, the parents, my mother and father, used to bring us to mass every week, and it's kind of something I've continued to do every Sunday. And I know now it's gone back online, so just try and stay in touch as much as possible. Okay, so during lockdown it was mass online almost most days, or every day? Yeah, kind of most days. Like, even a lot of the time I might be tuned into it, but it's kind of a routine more than anything. Just a way of getting off focus in the mind and getting your mind off any worries or stresses that you might have. Like, okay, it's almost your version of meditation or mindfulness. Grounding yourself. How did you find studying religion then? I presume that's all religions, is it, or is that just Catholicism? Yeah, so that's what I mean. I wouldn't be one to be forced religion on anyone, but it's more looking at the wider world religions and different types, because, like, we have to be open, especially in the current society. We're kind of interlinked with every country in the world, so it's nice to have a bit of knowledge and background on different kids that might be in the school, their faith and their beliefs. So it's important, but it's interesting. Well, there's no reason they can't live side by side as well, I guess. Exactly, and in the main, it's about generally just trying to be a good person, isn't it? That's good moral. Good moral. Spread. Did any of the other religions that you studied, catch your eye or catch your interest, or did you think, geez, this is, I'm enjoying this? I suppose I have to be careful. Yeah, they're all very, very interesting. They all have their own background, their own story, but those all come off the basis of living a good moral life. And I suppose Judaism is kind of one that we've been looking at recently. It's just interesting to try and keep your mind open and have an open mind and be able to kind of delve into other kind of people's views and outlooks. And come here, what are the rules before praying to a match? You can't ask God to pick sides. I mean, what? Let me do my best. Is that what you go with? Like to know what you said, to know what this said. He's a Limerick man deep down. That's hopefully. And if you ring that parish priest or a former teacher or whoever you class as a mentor, how often would hurling be amongst the things that are stressing you out or on your mind? Like, where is that in the hierarchy of worries or things that you might pick up the phone to talk about? Kind of the first thing we talk about, I know I'm ringing Father Mike Cusson, the local priest, will be hurling, but it's just general chat, like. But no, come here, like, there's no point really getting worried and bogged down about sport or getting stressed over, because at the end of the day, like, life does go on outside it, and there's a lot more important things going on in a lot of people's lives, and there's a lot more worries in people's lives. But it is great to have sport to just forget about what is going on, just to chat away, and it's nice to offload to normal things, like, Because anytime I watch you, like, you're a joy to watch. You look like you're throwing yourself into it is the best way to maybe put it on a pitch. You don't look like a player who's weighed down with worries or what if that goes wrong or I don't want to try this. That's how it looks. I mean, you could be as nervous. You could be nervous as hell for all I know and feeling tight as hell, but that's how it looks on the outside. I don't know what it's like when you're on a pitch, 20 minutes into a game when you're settled into it. I don't know what that feels like for you. No, obviously, come here, it's only natural for any player, young or old or male or female, to be nervous and to be anxious playing a game, because you spend so much time playing it. You want to be the best at it and you want to do the best you can. But I suppose I always try and emphasise the fact of myself that there is more to life, and there's no point getting worked up over little things. Like, a loss is huge and we take it as grief, and it does take weeks to get over. But after the few weeks, you realise look, perspective is everything, and just realise that I'm able to come home, I'm able to be greeted at the door by my mother and father. So they're the special moments you have to appreciate. Well,
isn't one of the great photos of the last however many years you and your mum hugging on the pitch at Croke Park? I mean, as a great...
Yeah. In fairness, she got on, I don't know how, but that's what it's about. Like, it's about, I know they can't go to the games now, but they still have something to hold on to, and they're able to sit down and watch a few games and be a part of it.
Well, look, what would Shane Dowling give to be out there?
That's the other side of poor old Shane, like, young fella, and he can't play, so it just shows you we don't know what's around the corner, so live in the moment and enjoy every time you go out to the pitch.
How would you analyse your game yourself, Keane? Would you target certain areas you want to improve? Would you think about a game in the days afterwards and go, you know, that's good? I mean, maybe you some examples you could give me, you know, be it point taken or hitting off your weaker side, or, you know, whatever. How do you judge yourself? What kind of boxes do you take or put, you know?
I suppose you kind of judge yourself off the team performance, really, and how you can help in any way possible to get the team performance, and whether it's that's passing the ball off or getting a score or winning the ball, it's just for the greater good. Like, you know, any player can go out and on any given day they might play well, but the team performance isn't up to scratch, so it's not really worth the end result. So you want to do the best you can for the team and for the greater good, if that makes sense.
No, total sense, yeah. Would you be a big man for looking at stats, your own stats?
I wouldn't. I suppose you would know the way it's gone. You really have to, and you have to delve into how you can improve yourself for the betterment of the team. But at times you can end up over-analysing yourself and get too worked up over little mistakes you might be making, and you could end up making the same mistakes over and over again if you keep looking at them. But it is very important, like. Yeah.
What's that Anthony Daly line? You know, 1,000 mad things happen and then at the end someone wins, and that's hurling. Like, it's probably is a game where I don't know how much you benefit sometimes for over-analysing, you know. It's so, you're so reactive out there.
Yeah, a lot of instinct, really. That's what I say about hurling.
Are you enjoying your hurling as much as ever then?
Yeah, I suppose, like, it's more so being back involved with your mates and with your being a part of something, I suppose. Like, there was 3 or 4 months there where you were going for a few runs on your own, and you were kind of, the motivation to get out wasn't there at times, and just to be able to go puck a ball with someone that's able to push you on and give you a bit of advice or give you a bit of positive vibes is huge. And I suppose as humans we depend on personal touch, so please God in the next few months we'll all be able to get out and get an all night out, get back at it.
I hear you. It feels like an impossible thought right now, but of course it will happen again, you know. I mean, you got to hang on to that. Yeah. Well, listen, best of luck for the next couple of weeks. Hope it all goes well. Stay safe. Obviously, I mean, I say the next couple of weeks. It's high wire act now. Like, you're either through or you're out. That's an unusual start an unusual start for you guys. Proper knockout now.
Yeah. It is, yeah, but look, we just have to take every week as it comes and do the best we can and be grateful.
Okay. Well, listen, it's Clare in Thurles, a Munster quarter-final knockout on Sunday, and you were here with thanks to Littlewoods Ireland. Keane Lynch, always great to talk to you. Keep it going. Best of luck. Thanks
very much, Sean. Thank you.
There was a roller coaster aspect to your career. I mean, incredible highs, devastating lows. You tended not to do things by half. Which I think, you know, made the whole country warm to you. You know, one of the many things that we kind of there for the terrible times and made the high times all that much better. With a bit of distance now, how does your career sit with you? Are you at peace with it? Are you satisfied with your career? Did you fulfill your potential?
I mean, I suppose I'm sure many athletes would be like this, but I definitely think I could have done more. I don't think, you know, you can be satisfied, you know, when things didn't always work well. And you look back and you think maybe I could have made better decisions. But I think I was a very emotional type of runner. And so by being emotional, then I made decisions based on my emotions more often than based on, you know, I suppose, you know, strategic plans, or there wasn't a lot of, you know, what would you call it? You know, the perfect plan set in place all the time. I was happy to bounce around the place. And I think I enjoyed racing too much. I wasn't willing to kind of run one race, then go off and train for a few weeks and come back and run another race. And I wanted to be in the thick of the action and out there competing all the time. And, you know, I suppose that was, you know, how I lived my career, was racing. And I lived to race. And the training was what I did in the winter time. And, you know, oftentimes the hard training would stop in, you know, the end of June, and you'd be straight into racing, and then it would just be a season of racing. And I love doing that.
Okay.
So you know, it's different. It's quite different these days now. There's people plan their seasons a bit better, and, you know, maybe you have to, because a lot of the races, you have to be really up for all these races because they're all at such a level and the pace is always so high. It's a very different sport now than when I was competing 20 years ago. At the same time, I watch some of the races now and I think, wow, if I had, you know, someone going out at that pace and, you know, you knew could chase times like that, I think, yeah, I definitely, you know, would have been able to run a bit faster, because in my mind, you know, I had time goals that I didn't achieve. And a lot of that was because the opportunities weren't there and the races weren't in that way. And at the end of the day, for me, when you run a race, most important thing is to win the race. And, you know, time is a bonus. So if you're in the middle of a race and you have to weigh up chasing time at the risk of losing, then depending on the importance of the race, then you know, winning is probably the number one priority.
And would you say it's rare or more common to be an emotional racer?
It's probably common enough, but then depending on the type of person you are as well, like if you're and then you're going to do things that you want to do, not necessarily things that your coach tells you to do or tells you not to do. And you'll convince your coach that this is what you want to do, even though it might not always be the right thing to do. So, you know, there were many times like that where you'd be taking a chance and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But you know, when you're of that mindset, you all think that, well, if I don't try, I'll never know. And, you know, there was definitely cases like that where, you know, even the Olympics in 2004, like I knew I wasn't going to run well. I just was so weak, I couldn't even do strides before the final, but I wasn't going to not run because, you know, I earned a place in the final. And, you know, what if magically I did feel good? You know, you have to give yourself a chance to do it. And it wasn't, you know, stopping anybody else from being in the final, me running, because if I didn't run, they're not going to bump up somebody else. So, you know, I had to line up and take the chance and, you know, hope for the best. But, you know, there was in the back of my, I just knew, you know, there was very unlikely that I was going to run well there. But, you know, at the same time, 2 weeks later, I went out and raced Durata Tulu, who had finished, I think she was third in the 10,000 meter final. And I won the race. So I knew deep down that, you know, I was fit enough to be competitive in the Olympics. But I wasn't just going to walk away and sulk about it, but I was just going to, you know, find out for myself that, you know, I definitely was ready. There was just, you know, one kind of that cost me. And, you know, we know so much more now about washing our hands. You know, when I think about all the people's hands that you shook and, you know, hugs and kisses and everything else at, you know, those times in your, when you were so vulnerable, like, you know, you just didn't think about that. So I think, you know, if anything, this year will have taught people a lot about, you know, being able to prevent themselves from, you know, being sick at the most vulnerable times. Yeah.
I guess you can only run in your own time and with the knowledge that you have and live with the consequences. It must be horrific. You know, the Olympics come around so rarely. It must be horrific in the early stages of the race in 96 or in 04, where, you know, you feel, I don't have it today. And everyone's about to find out pretty soon I don't have it. That resignation must be just the worst, the lowest.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2004 was probably more acceptable to me. 1996 was a lot harder because there was a little bit of unknown there, and probably a lot of denial as well of the kind of level of training that I pushed myself towards. You kind of think when you're running the Olympics, you have to train harder and you have to do more, whereas you actually just need to do more of the same, yourself to the start line, in the same shape that you were earlier, because that was good enough for the World Championship. So why wouldn't it be good enough for the Olympics? But the Olympics all of a sudden just changes the goalposts for everybody, and I suppose the expectations and the pressures are that much greater. And even if you don't think you feel that, it is around the place, and you know that everybody's watching. So you have to improve yourself that bit more. But yeah, no, it was, even back on that, it's something I like to kind of skip over a lot. And, like anything, you like to talk about the good times. But then when I do think about it, you always learn from your mistakes as well. And, you hope that you can use those lessons in later life, and when you have to make decisions further down the track, and even, not in an athletic sense, but just in a life sense, to kind of, I suppose, take your time before making decisions rather than always jumping in with what you think is the right thing to do.
Do you think you'd be a happier person day to day now, a more contented person day to day now, if you had a gold medal, an Olympic gold medal?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose I would be, but I suppose there's no doubt you would be. You'd probably be invited to a lot more things, and but oftentimes I hear people refer to me as the Olympic gold medal, and I don't correct them. I just leave it on. But I mean, at the end of the day, probably no. It probably wouldn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
But it would probably add more things to your life that you would be expected to do. Yeah, there's no doubt if you had the title of Olympic champion and you have that for your life, that it would be a nice feeling. It would be a nice title to have. But at the same time, when you walk away from your career, you don't really, your life, I suppose I like to have in some ways a quiet life and to do normal things, and maybe you're allowed to be a bit more normal when you're a silver medalist than if you're a gold medalist.
Well, look, there's still a statue of you a few miles up the road from where you are now, so I mean, it's not that normal.
That's quite fun. Especially when you go down there and you meet, often if I have some friends visiting Cove, and I get to show them around, and where a better place to meet than at the statue.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
Going from Man United, where my kit smelled like roses, to 18 months later playing for Barrow, where it's like you wash your own kit and who do you think you are, was probably the biggest shock in my life at that stage.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot, dodge it! Oh, what a goal for Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to them, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what do we get a slap?
Plus exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Right, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. If you want to get involved in any of the conversations that we're having, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can use the hashtag OTBAM on Twitter. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream as well. Owen, all is right with the world. It turns out that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just doesn't like football in the early part of the season, and then his team becomes an unstoppable juggernaut, ready to sweep all before them.
Or he just loves Paris so much, and his team loves Paris, and they love coming up against Paris Saint-Germain. The one thing that Manchester United must not do is panic in the way that they panicked before. I've never seen a team panic in the face of success like Manchester United panicked in the face of the last Paris Saint-Germain success when they appointed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as their full-time manager, something which you sense a lot of United fans have regretted down through the years. At least they can't make a similar massive mistake. I don't know what they could do over the next couple of weeks to overreact to this win in a similar manner. But a good win all told, and a good week for Manchester United, actually. I thought that if you wanted to look at the last 180 minutes they've played, maybe even the Newcastle performance was a better showing for Manchester United, especially considering that was the first one back after the 6-1.
I think it's a really big week for Solskjaer, for dropping Pogba, for sticking the kid in at centre-back, for going without his captain to Paris, for not having Mason Greenwood, not having the new signing Cavani. That was like one of those signature wins that gets everybody behind you, makes everybody go, okay, actually, Pochettino can wait in the wings. He can kick his jets on his massive pampas grass beef farm in Argentina, and it's nothing to do with us. He's just like, it's somebody else can go and try and seduce him to come and be the best manager who's available in world football at the moment.
But that's just hoping that this new dawn is a prolonged thing. The last, I want to say there's been 2 or 3 significant dawns under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and none of them have turned out to be prolonged periods of success for Manchester United. And what that is for Manchester United is being able to launch a title challenge. Now, the conditions will exist elsewhere in the league this year for them to mount that title challenge. Do you actually believe that Solskjaer will be able to do that with this group of players?
I don't know. There's a global pandemic on. Everything has gone weird, Owen. Everything has gone really, really, really weird. Aston Villa are the best team in Europe.
Then maybe they need to appoint Dean Smith. Maybe Manchester United need to do that, and that will see them through to win the league back. Sure, if strange things are happening, and if there is going to be a window for a team to make a massive jump over these next little while, now is the time to do it. And yes. Manchester United, they certainly have the resources to be able to do that. And I'm talking about the players that they currently have there. There are still issues there, and like you mentioned Edinson Cavani there this morning, for example, if you're picking the team for Chelsea at the weekend and Cavani is fully fit, where does he play at this moment? I know a lot of Manchester United fans were raving about Anthony Martial last night. I'm not necessarily having the Anthony Martial raving at the moment. I think the fact that Martial was missing last weekend was a massive positive for Manchester United, because you had Marcus Rashford playing through the middle, and it was great and it was brilliant that he accepted that he would be a left winger last season. But how can you watch the last 180 minutes of football and tell me that Marcus Rashford is not a central attacker? His goal came from a central position last night. He was playing up front in a 2 last night, and they either need to look at that as a front 2, or they need to make a decision if they're going to go back to 3 up front and say, listen, Marcus, you are our centre forward. Anthony, you're going to have to get over this, but you're back on the wing, because that is the key to success. Their 2 best attackers, and they've been sensational for the last 2 games, are obviously Rashford and Fernandes. Fernandes cannot move from the 10 position, and as a result of playing a 10, you cannot have a Mo Salah / Sadio Mane, unbelievably fruitful attacker on the either wing of your essential attacker. It has to be a number 9. And Rashford is your best 9 in this team at the moment.
Maybe Cavani is. Who knows? Look, these are good questions, and we'll put them to Andy Mitten standing by. We'll get to him in just a couple of minutes' time. I did want to talk about the row that broke out between Carragher and Neville, which I thought was kind of interesting. There was I don't know if people have seen this yet, and maybe I'm going to butcher it if I don't actually read exactly what happened here. Klopp had a go at Carragher, but not really. I couldn't make out if Klopp was actually... I haven't seen the clip, so I'm only reading the actual comments, right? This was reported by Neil Jones on Twitter. Klopp, we went into the season with 3 centre-backs plus Fabinho as cover and some youngsters. It's hard to have 4 world-class centre-halves. If anyone wants to tell us we made a mistake, I think Carragher mentioned already, there are a few reasons why they don't do this job. Sloppy. And then Carragher went, not once this season have I said it was a mistake for Klopp not to buy a centre-back for the exact reason that he states. And then Gary Neville chimes in on Twitter with boxing gloves, infighting already. And then Carragher bitches back really quickly. And let me just get this exactly right again. So, no, Gary, just a pundit critiquing the team he played for. Other pundits choose not to and instead attack the easy option at the club. # Woodward. This is like critically undermining Gary Neville's punditry on the part of Carragher, suggesting that he takes it easy on his former teammates and refuses to analyse the team. I thought that was an interesting little dynamic.
It definitely is, and I think Carragher is right in a lot of what he says there, because I was certainly happy that the game wasn't on Sky Sports last night, because it just would have become an ode to Ole.
Oh, you'd like to see that though. Ole's at the wheel. Let's see the madness again. A million memes. Think of the memes we've missed.
He did if any game deserved it, it was probably last night. In fairness to Solskjaer, it was a good tactical setup. But I think if you're actually making a case against Carragher there, I think the evidence shows that Gary Neville has gone in on Ed Woodward 10 times harder than he's ever gone in on his buddy Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and that's natural. I mean, if you're friends with somebody and you're in a really high-profile position where you're talking about them every week, you're probably going to go easy on your friend. That's human nature. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's
well,
the way it is.
There is something wrong with that. You're not paid to do that. There actually is something fundamentally wrong. You're not doing your job properly if you're just being mates with your mates. Like that's I completely disagree with that. And sorry, there's a third part of this, right, which is like the Carragher. Oh no, I'd never said that about Klopp. But also Klopp being so bitchy about the fact that Carragher might have said something slightly off colour once, maybe, and he's taken it down. He's waited for the opportunity to go, wow, look at what's going on?
I think Jurgen Klopp is still holding a little bit of, I don't know, he didn't like that moment with Roy Keane, basically, and he was the other person in that studio that night. It was Jamie Carragher, and does it take two to tango a little bit to create the environment for Robbie Keane to use the dreadful slur of the word sloppy against Liverpool? Maybe it does, and maybe that's what Jurgen Klopp is thinking about. It is very noticeable, though, how Jamie Carragher is like, please don't tell me off. Please don't say anything bad about me. And that's his natural reaction over the last couple of days. Like this Virgil van Dijk injury is going to be the thing that tears him apart, in the room, and your man is like, you're tearing me apart, Lisa. This is going to be the moment in the room when this tears Liverpool apart, and the civil war will start to emerge as a result of the worst injury of all time, if you're to listen to what everybody's saying at the moment. And like the comeback actually is going to be quite an amazing thing if you look at the injury narrative at the moment. When Virgil van Dijk makes his comeback, like they might actually have a parade for Virgil van Dijk's comeback, and then a parade when they win their next trophy as well. But I don't know about this, to be honest, that Jurgen Klopp is taking so much issue with what one pundit is saying. Like, there's a lot of what Carragher is saying is right, but also with Klopp, I mean, you had good injury form from Virgil van Dijk in the past. This is a freak injury. You can't just sign a centre-back who sits on the bench. That's not how it works, and he would have expected Virgil van Dijk to go out and play 50 games this season, as he tends to do.
Okay, a couple of things. I just want to say, Kieran Boyle has been in touch on Twitter, working overnight tonight here in Florida, patiently awaiting for #OTBAM to start and get me through the night. Kieran, best of luck with that. I hope the weather in Florida is pretty sweet and that life is good for you over there. And we did ask where else people are listening from or watching around the world. Pad John, greetings from Siam. So, Pad John to you too. Is that the correct response? I don't know. My whatever language that is very good. #accidental partridge. 9 minutes past 8 here this morning. The Under-20s Championship looks like it's in danger of not being allowed to finish out, even though we're at All-Ireland final stage this weekend.
Yeah, that's reports coming out this morning. There was some concern about this yesterday because the word senior had been thrown about in official utterances from the government that senior intercounty GAA would be allowed to proceed, and it seems that this is actually coming to fruition now, where under-20 games possibly not going to happen. So you've got an under-20 football final. You do have hurling tonight, which according to Paul Cunningham from RTE is under threat, but as you rightly pointed out before we came on air, level 5 isn't until tomorrow. We could kind of forget that. So only senior intercounty games basically are going to be allowed to go ahead in level 5 is the news this morning, which is a bit of a nightmare if you're an under-20 footballer who is planning for an All-Ireland final this weekend.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, look, I think that they should probably allow the under-20 game to go ahead this weekend. You know, it's like it's going to be policed the exact same way as senior intercounty will be. They are all grown-ups after all. If there was a war and there was conscription, all those players at under-20 will be toddled off to be Operation Human Shield first and foremost. So away you go, lads. Come on, they are grown-ups. It is elite sport at that level. So I don't know. Yeah, right. OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The 4th episode sees Harry Redknapp and Glenn Hoddle sit down for an in-depth chat. So stay tuned to OTB's social channels and OTB Sports Radio. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. A lot of people are probably just waking up not quite familiar with exactly what happened last night in the Champions League. The newspapers are reporting that Man United played a 3-4-1-2. We'll talk with Andy Mitten in a moment, who was in Paris for that game. Man United beat Paris Saint-Germain 2-1. They scored all 3 goals. A beautiful glancing Anthony Martial header, slightly reminiscent of Roy Keane's header in Turin all those years ago. Just the same kind of glance to the far side, and nothing that De Gea could do about it, as that seemed to really bring Paris Saint-Germain back into the game. But after Bruno Fernandes had scored a retaken penalty early on, and then Marcus Rashford pinged a winner in with 3 minutes left of normal time to win 2-1 in Paris. It was a 0-0 draw for Chelsea against Sevilla, the complete antithesis of the type of performance that we've seen from Chelsea so far this year. Really solid at the back and a bit toothless up front against the Sevilla side, who I thought yesterday, talking to Graham Hunter, that they would be in some danger of losing against. And then the other thing that Graham Hunter did yesterday was he marked our cards for Pedri, a 17-year-old, younger than Ansu Fati, and was like, this guy is absolutely amazing. Nobody's talking about him yet because Ansu Fati's been so spectacular, but keep an eye out for him. Comes off the bench last night and scores the 4th in a 5-1 hammering of Ferencváros. I forgot about the it's been so long since I've watched one of these big European nights where there's been so many games on. I forgot about the goal show on BT Sport and was flicking through and just caught Leo Messi picking the ball up on the right touchline when the score was 0-0. He goes off in this slaloming run, gets kicked in the penalty area. He's like, I missed this. Leo Messi being Leo Messi and doing Leo Messi stuff. And obviously there's loads wrong with that Barcelona team, but they're still great to watch.
Sensational to watch, and like the one concern you'd have about Lionel Messi is how much is his heart in it in terms of bringing this next generation of player through. Does he care about the legacy that he leaves behind in Barcelona, or does he care just about being like just winning everything, just like making sure that they absolutely go all the way in the Champions League this year, get back after the 8-2 and win trophies? Because it doesn't look like this team is going to be ready to win right now, but they will be in a couple of seasons if they keep all those players on the right trajectory. So how much is Lionel Messi going to be the person who puts the arm around the shoulder? And he certainly on the pitch looked last night that the performance was becoming of the sort of player who could put the arm around the shoulder, because like certainly like some of the goals that they scored were tap-ins, and Messi was just sensational in the build-up. 13 minutes
past 8 here this morning. Let's go to Andy Mitten, is with us to talk about Manchester United's performance last night. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, it's a good morning. I'm in Paris, and well, I'm quite happy actually, because I saw a wonderful Manchester United performance last night, and quite unexpected. I didn't think United would win here last year, and they did. And I didn't think that United would win yesterday. And not only did United win, but they played really well. And I spoke to Ole Gunnar after the match, and he said he felt it was a much better performance than in March 2019. So it was a fantastic performance, 2-1 win. United deserved it. I thought tactically they set up really well, changed the formation during the game, and what a great start for United's very tough Champions League group, which not only features PSG, but Istanbul and Leipzig, who are top of the Bundesliga as well.
Will you break down the formation for us? The papers are reporting it's a 3-4-1-2, but obviously that doesn't reflect any of the dynamism here. So Tellez played. Where did he play? Who were the 3 at the back? Who were in the midfield? How did it work? Was there actually 2 up front for the whole game? What happened?
Well, I asked Ollie about this, and he said 3 or 5 at the back, call it what you want. So, all right, let's call it a 3 at the back with 2 wide wing backs. David De Gea was arguably man of the match in goal. He made some key saves throughout. What I noticed being in the stadium was how vocal De Gea was. and communicating with Bruno Fernandes, who was the captain. So United started with a 3-4-1-2. So the two up front were Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial. They didn't always combine perfectly. At times they looked too distant apart from each other. Behind them was Bruno Fernandes. And then in the middle, you had Scott, McTominay and Fred. Alex Telles, making his debut, was on the far left, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka was on the far right. And then you had that three of Victor Lindelof, Luke Shaw and Axel Tuanzebe playing his first match since a League Cup game against Colchester United last December. He had the small matter of dealing with Mbappe and Neymar, and he did that admirably. He was one of the best players, if not the best player on the pitch.
Let's talk about him before we go back to the positioning of Telles and Wan-Bissaka. It was a bit of shock to see him catapulted into the team, but really they don't have that many other options at the moment. So in some cases it's needs must, but it's obviously also an indication that he trusts him to be part of that team. Is he potentially a solution? Are we looking at now this being something that Manchester United decides this gives us defensive solidity and gives us power in midfield? It gives us Marcus Rashford through the middle. There's a lot to like about this formation.
Yeah, and I think Ollie's going to use it again. He said as much in the press conference after the game. Axel's only issue has been injuries. He's had no luck with injuries at all. When he went on loan to Aston Villa the season before last, he was excellent. And everybody thought that last season would be his breakthrough season, but injuries did for him. He's a really nice lad. He came to live in Greater Manchester when he was 4 years old. His family were from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he didn't speak any English when he arrived in Rochdale, Greater Manchester. And not only did he learn English, he excelled at school, got fantastic GCSE results, really good A-level results. He's captained Manchester United at every single age group, including the first team last year against Rochdale, his hometown team. So the only worry, and it has been a considerable worry within the club, has been about his injuries, because United need reliable players. And Victor Lindelof and Harry Maguire, for the criticism which they have received more recently, they played every single game last season. Maguire did, and Lindelof was one of the top three performers in the team. As for the other central defenders, Phil Jones, Marcus Rojo, they've completely fallen out of favour. Chris Smalling has gone back to Rome. So central defence has been an issue for Manchester United, one which has been exacerbated by the number of goals leaked so far this season, 12 in 4 matches, including those 6 at home to Tottenham Hotspur. But there's another option there with Axel, and there's a couple of very, very good young defenders, but they're only 16, 17 in the club's youth system. Then it all starts to look a bit brighter in central defence. I'd also mention Luke Shaw. Some of his best games have been at the back in a 3. He played against Chelsea there in the league last season, and he's got competition now from Alex Telles, and it showed. He seems to have raised his game.
So is it Lindelof comes out of the team and Maguire goes in if this formation stays, and you would expect Tuanzebe and Luke Shaw as the other, so with Maguire as the trio in centre-back, essentially, or the 3 defenders?
I wouldn't know how to read Ollie's mind, because if we would have been talking yesterday about Axel Tuanzebe starting and playing as well as he did do, that would have been a complete surprise as well. But yeah, as you say, Shaw can play in a 3, Tuanzebe can play in a 3. Lindelof was very good last night, and the feeling within the club recently is that Lindelof has played well in the past and he will play well in the future. The issue has been that maybe he's been coasting in some matches, potentially because of a lack of competition, and he's been strongly criticised for that. But he had a top game last night, and United defended well. They moved the line up and down, and you saw the result. It wasn't just Marcus Rashford's winning goal or Bruno Fernandes' penalty. Throughout the team, it was solid, and it was a better performance than last time, but tactically they were able to shift. When Paul Pogba came on after 66 minutes, United shifted from the original formation to going 4 at the back, and it just worked.
the one consistent move from last Saturday night to last night was the midfield, Andy, where you had Fred and McTominay in there. Is that a real factor in how we're now viewing Lindelof in a different way? How we're even viewing Harry Maguire in a different way after his good performance on Saturday night?
Those two midfielders definitely shield the defence. Fred looks to move forward all the time. Scott McTominay is good at blocking, he's good at tackling, he's full of energy, physically he's strong as well. He played the first half last night with one eye, according to his manager, because he lost one of his contact lenses. So even more credit to Scott McTominay for his performance. McTominay and Fred played well against Newcastle, and they deserved to start last night. But again, it's more options, it's more competition. Donny van de Beek was brought in to provide more competition. And had we been speaking towards the end of last season, Nemanja Matic was the man playing there all the time. And now it's Scott McTominay. So it's good that there's competition there. Fred was having a really good season last year. And then he played fewer games when Paul Pogba came back. But Pogba didn't deserve to start last night and didn't do, so it was a big call to drop him, but I think it was the right call. And Fred was excellent against Paris last time, and he was excellent against Paris this time.
One of the big reasons why there's been a successful few days for Manchester United is that there's been a resurgence in Marcus Rashford, and there's no question that he's had a poor 2020 post-pandemic, but that's because he's been playing out on the left, Andy, and while he has looked good there in the not-so-distant past, you cannot deny now at this point that a central playing Marcus Rashford is the most lethal version of this attacker.
Not just post-pandemic for Rashford. He had a very serious injury and it took time to come back from. Before that, he was having a really good season last year. And yeah, there's been times where he hasn't played well more recently. And I know he's getting lots of advice with his coaching. I know he's been advised to get closer to the goal, to play more effectively on the turn, because his speed can kill defenders, whereas he's not as effective with his back to the goal. But last night, watching him bear down on that Paris goal in front of that empty away, and that was probably the saddest bit for me last night. Again, the lack of fans. What a great night that would have been, as it was in March 19 for Manchester United fans. But Rashford was really good against Newcastle at the weekend, and the way he combined with Bruno, that goal where United worked from Donny van de Beek starting the move with Fernandes deep into their own half was incredible. It's worth watching again. It is that good. But Rashford potentially, and he's not there yet, is a world-class player. And if he does more performances like that last night against teams of the calibre of PSG, then he'll start to realise that he's working hard. He's a good professional. He's a great human as well, and he's received a lot of credit for the work he does off the football field. But he'll be judged primarily from United fans by what he does on the pitch, and he's doing really well at the moment.
But do you think then that that Solskjaer will look at what he's done over the last couple of games and still continue to play a front three at times with Martial through the middle and Rashford on the left?
I think Solskjaer's favoured formation is that 4-2-3-1, but some of his best results have come not playing that formation. So he's got more choice now. Let's not forget Edinson Cavani has come, and I spoke to a lot of people associated with PSG last night, and they were all glowing about Cavani. And I've spoke to people who know him and know about him a lot more than I ever will. And his school report, if you like, is excellent. So that adds another dimension, because he's a completely different type of player to the fast, young, super rapide, as Thomas Tuchel called them, Manchester United strikers. Again, it's about options. Mason Greenwood hasn't figured for the last couple of matches. He's a young lad. He's going to have ups and downs. He's going to be inconsistent, but he potentially is a world-class talent as well. So it's all exciting. There just needs to be more consistency from Manchester United. It's one thing beating Paris and Newcastle away, and just about anyone away. The away form's fine, but the home form's been pretty dreadful. United have lost both the games at home this season and lost them well against Palace and Tottenham. Granted, the manager didn't think that they were fit, but there's big games coming up at Old Trafford against Leipzig, against Chelsea, against Arsenal. United cannot be losing them.
10 successive wins away in all competitions is a remarkable run of form, and when you put it like in those terms, last week before the Newcastle game we were like, oh, how many more defeats is it going to take before we have Mauricio Pochettino? The Manchester United roller coaster is fairly insane, particularly in the early part of every season so far.
Yeah, and I had a real downer last week on the club, and I'm quite optimistic. You might be able to tell from when I speak to you, but the information I was getting out was that the team wouldn't be able to prepare properly for the game at Newcastle. That the fitness levels still weren't good enough, and then it's this roller coaster. It turns around again. I can remember speaking to you last December before Tottenham at home. United had some really poor results. They absolutely needed a win and got one, and then beat Manchester City away. And then a few weeks later, lost at a Watford team who'd won 1 in 17. If this team is to become a successful trophy-winning team, the one thing it needs, which it doesn't have, is consistency. They found that consistency away from home. United's record now got stretches back to January. It's at Old Trafford where it needs to come.
Pardon my ignorance. What was the formation against Newcastle that worked at the weekend, and how different was it from what we saw last night?
Last night was different. I'm just checking the formation against
4-2-3-1.
And that's his favoured formation. That's what he tends to go with, and it works for him. But I got some feedback from within the club after that Newcastle game, which was goals were encouraging, but it was 1-1 until the 86th minute, and then there was a feeling that the midfield lost the ball a little bit too easily, and against better opponents such as Paris Saint-Germain, they were more likely to be punished. Well, that wasn't accurate either, because the midfield did play better, but it was United who did the punishing and not the Parisians.
The change in formation last night is also really interesting in the context of Pogba, Andy. Like, you broke down the formation really well last night. So how does Pogba fit into the 4-3-3 that then develops late into the second half?
Well, he switched it at a key point in the game because Paris, there was an inevitability I felt last night in the stands, and you could hear all the shouts going on that Paris couldn't be as bad in the second half as they were in the first. And then when Martial scored that really unfortunate own goal, I thought, oh no, just hold on, just hold on. And that substitution in the 66th minute, at first I was a little doubtful, because for the first 5 minutes, Pogba, in the words of someone who messaged me, who knows a lot more about football than I do, said he looks like he's had 5 pints, but he settled down and he actually put the ball out to Marcus Rashford for the winner. Pogba is more influential for the French national team than he has been for Manchester United. That has got to change. He is too inconsistent for Manchester United. He's been poor so far this season, and we all know that potentially he's a world-class player, and at times he's proved that, such as when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer first came to Old Trafford in those first few months. But when you saw Tottenham's midfield bypassing him and Nemanja Matic, it wasn't good enough, and he's got to get his levels right up. It's all right talking about playing for Real Madrid. Real Madrid aren't going to want players playing as poorly as Paul Pogba's played, but I'd still like him to be good and become successful long-term at Manchester United.
One last thing, Andy, the shirts, obviously it's European debut for it last night. It's still a little bit, and you flick it on, who is this team that's playing in these colours? A few more iconic wins in the shirt, and everybody's like, yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah, I think people don't like change, and Northern English people's definitely, this kit's absolutely terrible. And I saw the reaction when it came out, and then I saw the top combined with the shorts, and I thought, who on earth has thought of this? This looks appalling. It doesn't look quite so bad with plain white shorts. And you're right, kits are remembered by the results in them. And I think I said when I spoke to you at the time, Man United go to Real Madrid, and I said this tongue-in-cheek, and win 4-0 wearing that zebra kit, then everybody will love it. Well, actually, United have been drawn with Paris Saint-Germain. They've gone to Paris, they've won the game, and that zebra kit probably picked up a few sales off the back of that. The people who buy the kits, I mean, a lot of kids buy the kits and they love them, although my 13-year-old brother, that was the first one where he paused on it and thought, I'm not being seen Manchester wearing that because, I'm not a wild animal. But maybe you might think slightly differently after having seen those goals last night and that win.
Yeah, once you see the celebrations in them, that's all that really matters. Andy, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Andy Mitten live from Paris this morning, giving us some thoughts on a pretty important victory for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last night, and all the more impressive for the different manner in which it was achieved from previous wins. 2-1 win last night for Manchester United, 0-0 draw for Chelsea in the Champions League. We'll run you through the whole gamut of sports news with Sheahan a little bit later on. I do want to tell you about this, though. A reminder, of course, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're running a poll on Twitter. It's the same poll that we ran yesterday, and it's just to see exactly how the mood has changed. Obviously, when the news was leaked at 6 o'clock 2 days ago that we were all going into level 5, but that a derogation was going to be made for elite sport, there was a massive immediate focus on the GAA. Given everything that's happened around the club matches, I think it was a fairly natural thing. And then a lot of small businesses were coming out saying, I have to close, but these games can go ahead. It doesn't seem to make that much sense to me. A lot of anger, a lot of wondering, is this fair? And so they ran a poll on Clare Live on Monday night, which I think was 67% against the games going ahead. Yesterday it was 55% saying no, don't play the games. This morning, 24 hours on from the poll that we ran yesterday, it's now 58% in favour of the games going ahead, which I think, Eoin, the reason that we ran the poll again today was to see just how quickly things are changing and how people's minds change. And once you start to live with things for a little bit, you go, oh yeah, okay, I see what you're doing there. Professor Mary Horgan might have helped a little bit yesterday as well. And even a lessening of anger, maybe. Like, I think that's one of the emotions that people are entitled to feel after we go back into lockdown, is a little bit of anger for no particular reason. And you think to yourself, where can I channel this anger? And maybe the GAA would have been a perfect place to channel it, because there would be a reasonable point to be made that they've been getting away with, I guess, the lockdown, that they will get away with the lockdown, I should say, because they're allowing their games to go ahead. And if people feel that way, then they're entitled to feel that way. And maybe that's just dialed down a little bit 24 hours on. Okay, if you've got a view on that, we'd love to hear from you. You can get on Twitter, twitter.com/offtheball, and you can vote on that. We'll pin the tweet at the top of that as well, but we would love to hear your views. 0879 180 180 is the number. Now, Ali Donnelly of Scrum Queens is with us to talk to us about the situation with regards to Ireland's qualification for the Rugby World Cup, which seems to have been thrown into a little bit of disarray. Ali, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. How are you? Very good, thanks here.
So a lot of us are kind of catching up on where the qualification process is. The next Rugby World Cup is going to be in New Zealand, and a draw is about to be made, or it will be made relatively soon, for those World Cup groups, but Ireland aren't sure if they're going to be included in that draw because we haven't qualified yet.
Yeah, I think there are going to be a lot of balls with the word TBC on the teams that come out of that draw. So just to recap people's memory, so Ireland have two ways of qualifying for this World Cup, and still have a very good chance of doing so. So one of them is through the European qualifiers due to happen in December, so over 3 weekends in December, where Ireland would join Scotland, Italy, and the winners of a small tournament that's now been postponed. So that's the problem here. If they won that, they'd qualify directly and they'd all sorted. If they were runners-up, they'd go into another process, a kind of final qualification tournament next year. So the problem we have now is that the team to join those teams in the qualifier in December is unknown, because although it feels certain that it will be Spain, they have to play Russia and the Netherlands. And yesterday, Rugby Europe announced that those games due to happen in the next 2 weekends have actually been postponed. So there's a real challenge now for World Rugby to make a decision about what to do about, you know, the fact that one of the teams for the qualifiers in December will be missing. So currently feels quite unlikely that Ireland's game against Spain would happen on the 5th of December, as it's due to happen now. But you know, Rugby Europe, they're still trying to work out when they get these games on. So Ireland will have to go into these two Six Nations games not really knowing, I think, quite what will happen at the other side of the month. So we've got a couple of Six Nations games that were hangover essentially from the March fixtures being postponed as well. Yeah, so Ireland will play Italy and France in the next few weekends, and actually great preparation for them to play qualifiers if they happen. I mean, my instinct is the best way forward for World Rugby is to let the qualifiers happen without that team. So Scotland play Italy, for example, the first weekend in December in a Six Nations game, but it's also doubling up as a qualifier. So Ireland are likely to have games in December, it probably one less than they might have, and then we'll see what happens next year. So but quite exciting, actually, for Ireland coming into the weekend's game against Italy. They've got a really interesting team, very good mix of exciting young players, some of which you'll know about, Eoin Parsons and so on, and then some real experience. And I'm really excited to see Clare Malloy back in the mix. So she's been out for a year, undoubtedly one of the best back row players in the world, and what a great player for and leader for Ireland to bring back in. Observers of what exactly has happened with the Irish women's team over the last number of years were concerned at various stages that the 15
a-side game hadn't been prioritised, that the route that the IRFU seemed to be going down was prioritising the sevens team. Maybe that was a short-term thing, maybe it was a long-term thing, I don't know. What's your instinct about where the women's team are now versus where they could have been, and was that process the right process that the IRFU took the women's team through?
Yeah, I mean, look, that upheaval has happened to other countries too. It isn't just Ireland, and it's difficult because the sevens programme and the Olympic kind of draw that does bring different funding sources into the mix for teams. So a lot of the teams competing in the World Series will be, looking to qualify for the Olympics, will be getting additional funding to fund sevens programs. And there's not a lot of money in women's rugby, right? So, if you can get those extra funding streams, you can understand why Union might say, let's focus on this for a bit. But interestingly, there's the sevens series has stopped completely now. There hasn't been any World Series this year, for obvious reasons. So what that has meant is that the focus on 15s for these autumn and winter games is massive, because all of the players who might have otherwise not been available are available. And if we look in New Zealand, for example, you've got a lot of the world's best sevens players, your Portia Woodmans, for example, playing in the 15s provincial leagues and looking to play in the kind of makeshift test games at the Blackfern. So the sevens argument's almost gone out the window a little bit for the next few weeks. So we can just focus on 15s, and those decisions have to be taken next year. But, it is a World Cup year. And a lot of the players, not all, but a lot of the players will say, actually, while we can still pick and choose, we really want to play in the big tournaments in 15s, even if I am a sevens player out and out.
Because of the investment that we've seen the RFU make in rugby in England, Ireland, we were obviously not that close, but we're able to beat them once and win a Grand Slam. It seems like the disparity between the two countries has grown exponentially in the last 5 years. Is that fair?
I think England are, in terms of investment and funding and support, have always been ahead of the pack, including New Zealand, who are the reigning world champions. They've always taken a view that, in terms of investing in their women's teams, about the importance of that. But I think what will be interesting in the next few years is all of the unions who are, involved in the women's game are struggling financially. The RFU are set to make, record losses this year because of the lack of crowds coming into Twickenham. So in a strange way, the playing field might be levelled a bit. But I think, I'm based in London. What you see here is really significant acceleration in the club game. So the Premier 15s here now has its own sponsor. O2 announced yesterday that they were renewing their sponsorship with the RFU, but it would be 50-50 funding for the men's and women's teams. I mean, in a way, kind of remarkable they even had to say that, because it wasn't happening before. So England have always been further ahead of Ireland in the game of sponsorship, investment in ring fencing funding for their leagues. And I think it's the club game, I suspect, will be the big driver of change. And loads of Irish players, of course, playing in the league over here. Cliona Maloney, Ireland's Player of the Year, is part of a WASP team here who will do very well this year. So I think it's that part of the mix that will make it difficult to catch up.
And Ali, are England ahead of the curve there when it comes to that 50-50 split, or is that commonplace with a lot of nations around the world?
In terms of 15s and 7s, you mean?
The 50-50 split from O2 going to the men's and women's game.
Well, it's always incredibly difficult to find that out because, sponsors and, finances behind what goes where in the national teams is always presented as a lump sum. So we've never really known that. So in a way, actually, I think it's fair play to O2 for being really transparent about it and celebrating it. So, who knows? A lot of unions have joint jersey sponsors, so it will be, the same front of shirt sponsor for the men and the women's team, and you never really know what the split is like. So I welcome that transparency, and that will be a big boost to England, actually, not just the investment, but the profile that O2 will give them. It's a big brand here and around the world, and they've got marketing and communications money that the RFU certainly doesn't have at the moment, but would never really have. So it's the scale of influence that they can bring, I think, is quite important.
I always really felt like the biggest advantage that women's sport was going to have over the next couple of years was the fact that terrestrial TV broadcasters had traditionally broadcast matches at certain times, Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, and those games are now being taken off them because satellite TV was coming in, pay-per-view was coming in and stealing those sports. And actually, there's still the architecture and the infrastructure in place for an expectation for a sports audience to sit down and watch. Sports fans will watch anything so long as it's competition. Like, literally, they will watch. I think darts is the proof of that, but not to offend my darts buddies, but they will literally watch anything so long as there's a sense of competition and jeopardy, and they don't know what's going to happen. And women's sport, if it's organised properly and financed properly, is actually right and ready to go to take these time slots.
Yeah, well, you're talking to a big darts fan here, so
I'm surrounded by them.
Well, it's interesting. It's the thing. One of the things I'll miss the most about not being able to get back to Ireland for Christmas, watching the darts with my family. But I think one of the really interesting things happening behind the scenes, and you haven't seen much communication on this yet, but you will, is pre-COVID World Rugby, we're looking at changing the calendar for women's rugby. So this is the process which went awry and didn't work in the men's game. But in the women's game, there are much less barriers in the way to making it happen. So what you may well see is some of the women's Six Nations games or other tournaments shift in the calendar, and that is in part to give them the best chance possible of being broadcast to big audiences. So that the Six Nations now actually presents quite a headache to broadcasters, because the games often bump up against the men's games, they bump up against scheduling around the under-20s as well, and it doesn't quite work. So there are a lot of people, and I'm definitely one of them, who think, what is the right thing for women's rugby here? And so World Rugby are looking at that, and we could see a change. I mean, over here, I think one of the really positive things that's happened with women's sport generally in the last few months is the BBC and others have taken women's football, for example, onto terrestrial TV. So there are quite a lot of games now in the women's Super League, or they were in the FA Cup as well, that were shown on great slots in the afternoon at the weekends that they wouldn't normally have had, because there is opportunities on the schedules now where sport's not happening all the time, or where, for example, the BBC hasn't got as many programmes to broadcast as it used to, unless they play repeats, because there was that lag in filming. So I think there are great opportunities, and I'm definitely one of the optimists when it comes to women's sport being able to build on the momentum pre-COVID and not sort of presenting a very negative view about what the impact the last 6 months will have happened.
As somebody obviously who's been centrally involved on a career level and amateur playing participation level in sport, and as somebody who has been out of the country for the last while, what have you made? Today's the last day of the 20x20 campaign. It's the launch of their closing chapter, but it's essentially the last formal gig. Martina Navratilova is part of a panel discussion today, and the theme is what we want to see for women in sport in Ireland into the future at the end of the 20x20 campaign, and to talk about the legacy of it. What have you made of it? And as somebody who knows this country unbelievably well and has proximity to it, but has actually been just outside it for the last while.
I think it's been hugely impressive, and actually it being outside does give you a perspective about how impressive it's been, because people talk about it here as well. So I'm involved in a campaign called This Girl Can, which is something that my organisation Sport England, who I work for, fund and run, and it's not dissimilar in terms of what it's trying to do. And I think what 20x20 has done is it's just created a narrative that is impossible to ignore. One, because it's been not short term, and it's been there banging the drum and having the conversation. And two, I think it has probably forced people like Sport Ireland and like the other sporting NGBs who deliver sport to think a bit differently. And that's what you want campaigns like that to do, to make people stop and think, actually, is what we're doing here right? Are we doing enough? And I think the answer is inevitably no when it comes to the gender gap, or when it comes to profile. And I think it's what an amazing thing to get young girls talking about women's sport. When I was growing up, we talked about Sonia O'Sullivan. I'm from Cork, and that was kind of it, and that was inspirational enough. I see that she has been doing some interviews at home. I thought she inspired me, a terrible runner, can I just say, but but she was really inspiring. So I just think it's amazing for young girls to be able to have the conversation and see it on television. And Ireland is unique, right? So people are shocked here when I say that for the finals of, the All-Ireland Camogie or football finals, 60,000 plus people might watch those games. People cannot believe that. So there's always been a basis for the conversation about women's sport to go to the next level in Ireland. And I think 2020 just took it and pushed it through a door.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is that this has to be a rolling, and people need to continue to rally behind it. Otherwise, I actually think the genie's out of the bottle, and it can't go back, because, as you said, it's forced people to ask fundamental questions about their own behaviour, about the language they use when they're talking about these sports. And I think that once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. That's certainly my hope with this. Just one last point on the 50-50 splits. I'm mildly obsessed by Title IX and the impact that it had on American sport, and fundamentally believe that no government money should be spent on sport unless it is being equally allocated male and female. It's a really basic fundamental thing. But when you say you shouldn't really have to say that, it's kind of shocking that we have to say that it's a 50-50 split. It's revolutionary what O2 are doing in some ways, because it's forcing everybody else to go, yeah, we should have a 50-50 split.
And it starts to set an expectation of it. And that's also, to the point we just had about 2020, what campaigns like that do, and what decisions like O2's decision do, is it sets expectations, and it makes the ordinary public think it's unacceptable when it doesn't happen. So it is really important. I mean, Title IX, we could have a whole lot. You should have a show that just talks about the impact that has had. And if you look at, over the summer, I was, really a big fan of watching women's football and women's basketball in America. That comes on the back of decades of change there, and the kind of impact that those teams are able to make, not just on television and broadcast schedules, but they also took it to another level in terms of politics and campaigning. So I think O2, they'll put gentle pressure on other sponsors to do the same. And actually, really interestingly, you saw Canterbury this week, running their women's shirt launch in Ireland very differently to how they might have done it a few months back, because there was that backlash initially. So, that's how change happens, right? You keep talking about it, you keep banging the drum, otherwise nothing changes. And maybe O2 have started a precedent here that we can't roll back from.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Ali, great to have you on. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
That's Alison Donnelly there. You can check her out on Twitter and follow Scrum Queens as well. Also part of a brilliant Keith Wood not Hall of Fame, Keith Wood State of the Union that we did. You can subscribe to that podcast. It's a separate podcast feed on the OTB podcast network. And we actually are going to revisit that over the next while as well, because not much has changed and loads has changed in the last 6 months too. So we've got an opportunity to go through that as well. I do want to remind you as well that, as I said there, today is the final day it's the launch of the final chapter of the 20 by 20 campaign. And there's a big event today at midday. So legends of Irish international sport. I mentioned Martina Navratilova, Ada Hegerberg, Rachel Blackmore, Brian O'Driscoll, Sonia Sullivan, and there's going to be debates and discussions about the future that we want for women in sport in Ireland. Check out Think It, Ask It. That's the hashtag. Or 20 by 20 social media channels for details on how to register. You need to register, otherwise you won't be able to watch it. And OTB Sports is a proud partner and supporter of 20 by 20. Let's move back to the GAA story that we've been covering over the last 24 hours or so. And I'm delighted to say David Herity is with us. Of course, people, David, know you as a former Camogie manager, a current hurling manager with Kildare, a former goalkeeper with Kilkenny. One of the other reasons that we wanted to talk to you this morning is that you're a teacher, and so you're fundamentally aware of what it's actually like to be going into an environment at the moment, and then also working in the inter-county sphere. So how are you getting on?
Everything's going very well at the moment there. Yeah, school-wise, look, the children are delighted to be back. I think all the teachers are extremely delighted to be back, and that we're not doing a remote learning. I think even any coach or manager that's out there, and I feel sorry for if the under 20 and the minor campaigns are going to be pulled there this morning. It's extremely tough when you're trying to communicate with your players or your teachers online. It's just very difficult to try and get that personal element to the whole thing. So I'm delighted that we're in the schools. The children are as well. I know that they claim that they'd love to be at home in their beds and kind of doing some work that kind of way. But I think when we talked about there the last day, when you start taking away that aspect of they can't go out at lunchtime and play soccer or run around with their friends, then I think that changes all their opinions as well. That they love being back in school, and it's extremely well run. I'm down a new school at St Mary's in Thomastown, down in Kilkenny, and everything is going extremely well so far. So and same back with Kildare. We're back now. Just 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks behind, I suppose, most of the county ourselves. Probably leashing awfully a little bit that way. But things have gone extremely well over the last while, so we're looking forward to the championship now the weekend. And how do the players feel? I mean, obviously, some of them are going to be reluctant to come forward, but some of them are going to come forward and talk about the doubts that they have or their own personal scenario where they might have a vulnerable person shielding at home. What's that conversation been like for you as a manager with them? Well, we put it out to the players, even throughout lockdown. Before this scenario about going back to training, how anyone would feel, but no one came up. Anyone that has, any kind of symptoms, they just give us a text or give me a buzz. We have Cormac Kerwin there, who's our operations officer, and anything that we're a little bit confused with, he knows all the information. Would give him a buzz. If there's a few of them have been, I suppose, around scenarios where it's girlfriends or workmates that have some symptoms. Again, they just stay away from training until the test results come back, and it's just like that. There's no pressure on anyone to play at any stage. I know there's a couple of lads that are injured at the moment, and they obviously can't come near training, which is unfortunate to them. They can't, they have to stay away because you're trying to limit the numbers that you have at training. But I know in a couple of their circumstances, they would have had people at home, vulnerable people at home. So it's kind of worked out well. That we may not have had them back if they weren't injured. So that's the only scenario. But apart from that, everything else has been running extremely well. No one has had any concerns, and in fact, it's kind of nearly even been the opposite. That we had a lot of injuries throughout the club season, and then asking new lads to come in, they were more than happy to come in. So there seems to be at the moment a huge want to come in and play with the inter-county team. So that's great to see at the moment.
Yeah, I wonder, is that a function of the split season where players get the love of it from playing for their club and then don't feel like it's going to be a burden to go and join the county, particularly from a shortened season? Look, maybe we'll come back to that at some point, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on that more generally. I did want to ask you what you made of the debate that happened over the last 24 hours. The government NEFIT made a distinction and said elite sport can go ahead. The government said grand, we're going to go with that. And then there was this massive outpouring of like, no, you can't let the GAA go ahead, it's ridiculous. And then everybody calmed down a little bit, and now 24 hours on, we've had a poll and there's been a massive switch from 56% yesterday saying don't have it, and now it's a majority saying do have it. I think by the time the games come around, people will be like, actually, maybe it's a good thing that we're able to learn a little bit from the first lockdown and do a bit more than we're doing this time than we did the last time.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the GAA aren't going to pull the championship. There's 15 million there at the moment, and it's a bit like even you take it back into the educational side of things, that if there's a storm outside and the principal pulls and say you can all go home, then you have to make back up the days. So no one wants that. You're waiting for the department to actually call that. So it's the same as well with the GAA. There's 15 million there. They're not going to give up that. If they pull it, they lose that. If the government do, well, then at least they might give them a chance to keep on to something. So we're firing away as normal. I think, even the weekend there, you'd find yourself, there's very little on TV. All of a sudden, then the football, I found myself watching the Cavan Kildare football match, which I don't think I ever would. It's something just to keep yourself occupied while it's on, when you're making dinner for the week. Then it's nice to have it on in the background. Even there the other night, watching the Tip and the Clare games, you find yourself, there's only a certain amount of looking back at games that you can do, but it is going to be run off extremely quickly. All this, it is being looked after very well at the moment, and there aren't any cases so far that we're aware of anyway last week of any contact happening from our cases happening from the actual playing on the field. So even training wise, it's run extremely professional. Any of the setups are owned. The lads come in their own cars individually. They go out onto the field. The sanitizer there for everyone. They come in. They get their feed and off they go. So I think sometimes maybe it's certain people maybe from the outside are looking at it and kind of thinking maybe, Jesus, we're all in dressing rooms. Every single lad is in dressing rooms and they're having showers and so on, and that this is what it's leading to. But I think if it's run extremely well, I think a lot of the inter-county setups and managers will learn a huge amount from the club scene as well in county finals. And I think if there are any success after Leinster finals or All Ireland or whatever it is, I think the managers will, have a fair old bit of cop on there to kind of understand that there has to be extremely controlled in anything that goes on from here on. That they'd have learned a huge amount from the clubs.
The thing to compare with the club season as well, David, is that we are in a different state nationally. Like, this was pre-level 3 when we saw all these scenes. Maybe I'm being totally naive to say that personal responsibility will be shown, but surely we will see some toning down in the jubilation once we get to All-Ireland final week. And then I'm talking about All-Ireland final week. If a Mayo does win it, surely we have the ability to learn from what we saw in Cork, in Blackrock, and in all the other instances we saw as well. We're in a different stage now in the stage of this virus.
Definitely. I think everyone has kind of realised that, it needed kind of probably the second slap on the wrist and to go back into another 6 weeks. But the thoughts of when the All-Ireland final does come around, we'll be heading into the 6-week lockdown has just finished at that stage then on the second. The thoughts of anyone going into another lockdown, a third one then, or for, as I said, certain counties, the fourth lockdown, there's not a chance. They'll make sure that I think everything is nice and relaxed. As much as they can, and people can celebrate in their own homes as well. I think just what happened after certain county finals, and it was just a couple of videos that came out that it was just absolutely off the charts what was going on. I think, it's not going to be as parochial as well. Like, everyone in the one village celebrating, you're not going to have that as much. I think everyone will enjoy it, but just enjoy it in their own homes. And I think you'll see a lot more of the celebrations going on that way rather than that whole collective from the whole club.
David, we'll let you go. We know you got to get to school. One last question on how things are actually going for you guys. Big year for Kildare Hurling, big opportunity for you to mix it with at a slightly higher level as well. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going very well. We're quite fortunate that we got an extra week of training in. We didn't go back until the 8th of October because a lot of our lads were out. Obviously the club championship was delayed, and then we're only at semi-final stage, and most of our team would be involved there. And then I suppose our first decent training session when everyone would have been on the 12th, but thankfully we were able to go back to the 8th. We've 3 extra sessions in. There's been a huge interest in, even the players that have performed extremely well at club level to come in and join in with the panel over the last few weeks. And like you spoke about already there, but it's only a 6-week campaign, so there is a huge interest there as well. But it's going extremely well. We'll obviously know a hell of a lot more on Saturday when we go out and play Offaly, who will be extreme favourites. But we'll see. Yeah, there's Derry's Downs, there's Wicklow's, Roscommon, Sligo's. There's I'd say apart from taking Offaly out of it, it's extremely competitive, and then there is that kind of bit of a cherry at the end of it that 2 teams do qualify out of the Christie Ring as well. So that's going to be every team there will feel that they have a chance there to get promoted this year. So It's very exciting.
No, it's a brilliant competition. David, great to talk to you as always. Thanks a million.
Not about it all, Ger. Thank you, lads. See you on.
David Harady there, the current Kildare manager, used to be working with the Dublin Camogie team, and obviously more famous from his playing days as the Kilkenny #1 goalkeeper and an All-Ireland winner in his time. Eoin, I think you made a good point about the county being in a different scenario than it was. The headline on the front of the Sun this morning: "This party's COVID, you're going home." The cops are literally going to be able to knock on your door and kill the music. They're going to be able to say, I hear some repetitive beats in there. Mm-hmm. I see you're all drinking. I suspect that you're not all from the same household, unless, your ma had 27 kids the same age. So I think that will help, right?
And as well, another fact is that there won't be people allowed into the grounds. Like, this was a 2-pronged failure on the GAA's part. The main failure, obviously, was the partying that was going on around the games. That was obviously the big one. But secondarily, there was also congregation of people in close proximity at the games in a much less organised way than, say, our League of Ireland games, where you had, either parents who had 26 kids, or you had people sitting very close together in the grounds. I'm not saying that the spread of the virus came as a result of that, but it was a bad look. That can't happen now, because it's only going to be the subs and the media in the stands. And the longer that continues, the better chance you have of this thing going off without a bad look.
I mean, but you did introduce the point of Mayo. Come on.
That's where the argument falls down.
Exactly. The county will go buck mental if they win the All-Ireland this year. And you know what? I would be saying, look, let's just quarantine the whole county for 2 weeks. They can all go and give it to each other for 2 weeks. And then at the end of it, away you go. Just make sure that, what can you do?
Maybe give it to midnight on the Monday after the All-Ireland and put Mayo into level 5 lockdown at that midnight, so everybody has to be in by then. And just send all the guards in the country along the border of Mayo. Build a wall.
So they can't come out. They're grand. Build a wall.
Exactly. Build a wall. They can go to Achill if they want.
That's a better idea. That's a better idea. Turn Achill into a party island. Everybody who goes, a COVID party island, you just accept that you're going to get it if you go there, and the rest of the county can celebrate sedately in their own homes. But everybody who wants to go completely mental can take over Achill for a fortnight.
I've always said Achill is the Ibiza of Ireland, and they can prove that in the next couple of weeks. Now is your chance, Achill. Get on that level. It's a great idea. That's it. And it's just one bridge into Achill, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Right, that's just Mayo's guards. Just put all the Mayo's guards along the road.
They'd be paddling out. There'd be helicopters coming. They'd suddenly find a landing strip. They'd dig the one up in Knock, and they would transport it by hand to Achill so they could land planes for the people returning from Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, where all the Achillites left in the 1900s. And then driven out by the famine. I'm actually looking forward to Mayo ending the famine. It would be the best end to 2020 that we could possibly have.
I would be delighted for them as well. In fairness, I think that if it's going to happen in a year, I think that it'll be very hard to begrudge them. It's hard to begrudge them in any situation, to be quite honest with you. And I'm sure anybody who, say, isn't from Dublin would have been really rooting for them in those finals that they got to over the last few years and fell short. And to do it this year would just be... It would be incredible. It would be so typical. I know that's been mentioned quite a lot over the last couple of days. But it really would be just a very 2020 thing to happen at the end of 2020.
We're doing shout-outs to people from around the world today. Kevin O'Shea, good man, Kevin. I think you might be the furthest one so far. Check it in from Sydney. How are you? Ger says, ciao from Calabria in Italy. How are things in Italy at the moment? How are things in Sydney? Give us some information, give us some details. Say hello to anybody you want to say hello to. Liam says hello from Manchester. Not so far, but, you know, I'd say we have plenty of people listening in England as well. And Adam is listening from Cape Town this morning, or watching on youtube.com/off the ball. So we have them in South Africa, we have them in Florida, we have them in Sydney, we have them, where was the other, where was the first one? Was it Thailand? Siam. Where is Siam?
Thailand, isn't it?
Well, there's a restaurant called Siam Thai. Is that why you're jumping to that conclusion? I don't know, but maybe we...
No, as in Siam is Siam is Thailand is what I mean. You know the way you used to have like made in Siam used to be on the old Irish imports and stuff like that, and it's now made in Thailand.
Okay.
Like that's the jump that I've made there. But no, I'm pretty sure Siam is the former name of Thailand, unless there's another Siam that I'm unaware of.
No, very good. Still 55% reckon that we should go ahead with the GAA Championship. David Harady boiled it down pretty quickly. There's 15 million on the table there, and that ain't going anywhere. So the GAA aren't going to pull it. If they're forced to pull it, they'll pull it, but they haven't been forced to pull it. So, right, let's get into this. So Tony Kelly is coming next, the Clare hurling legend. Eoin spoke to him yesterday, so we're going to hear what he thinks about whether or not the games should be going ahead. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. The other thing is that rugby is back after 7 long months. International rugby is breathing down our necks with the women's and men's teams both in action at the weekend. Mario Rosenstock has been so moved, he's written a song to celebrate. Check it out during the ad break. Share the positive energy over at energia.ie/rugby anthem.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Brady and Belichick have been at the forefront of the credit in New England for the last 20 years.
OTB's American Football Show, The Snap on OTB Sports Radio.
Burrow very much thrown in the deep end. He seems to have the correct temperament. I've never been totally won over by his actual talent, to be honest.
Keep updated with American football on OTB. Tune in to The Snap every Friday on OTB Sports Radio.
Okay, Paulie, let's do this.
Get stuck in, Brian.
Memories racing through my mind. Drop goal slam 2009. My soft hands, my incomparable flair. Highlights dancing through my hair.
My line-out takes, the stadium rocks. Donegal Callahan's bright red jocks.
Soldier Field, the figure 8. All Blacks heads on a plate. They said our chances were 1 in 10, so we got them at home and we did them again. Johnny Sexton, your baby face.
Drop goal France, outer space.
Grand Slam England, what's the crack? We love those memories, we want them back. When Dev flies high, we will sing the fields of Athenry. 'Cause I know when we're about to be elbow bumping with Michael D.
Yes, indeed.
Then we're back.
Now we're back.
Yes, we're back. Yes, we're back. Yep, we're back. Positive energy radiating from me.
6 months, we needed patience, but now it's time for the Guinness Six Nations.
Savage, proud, ready, able. Put the fear of God into the top of the table.
Electricity, light a spark. From the Aviva Stadium to Energia Park.
New coach, brand new blood. Rob Kearney, out to stud. Rory Best became a farmer. Now it's time for Jordan Larmour.
Sexy's back, he's got the goo. Says he'll play till he's 52.
When Dev flies high, we will sing the fields of Athenry. 'Cause I know when we're about to be elbow bumping with Michael D.
Yes, indeed.
Then we're back.
Now we're back.
Yes, we're back. Yes, we're back. Yep, we're back. This has been an Energia production, overflowing with positive energy. Thank you.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football.
I mean, I've got to win. I can't lose. If I lose, I'm going to be devastated.
The fourth episode sees Harry Redknapp and Glenn Hoddle sit down for a feature-length conversation. So stay tuned to OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Okay, Clare hurler Tony Kelly has joined All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship sponsor Littlewoods Ireland to launch their new Style Meets Substance campaign, returning for the fourth year running as a top-tier sponsor. Littlewoods Ireland's Style Meets Substance campaign is a celebration of hurling people, their individuality, their love for the game and joy of championship. Tony, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, no.
An interesting time, I'd imagine. You're there, as people can probably tell, in school at the moment doing this interview. You're set to go out on the hurling pitch for a massive game against Limerick this weekend. How do you feel about everything? How do you feel about your own safety and actually taking part in this championship?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it's very unusual times. From my own point of view, probably personally, I'm happy to proceed with it. With the championship, I've no real issue with playing it. I suppose that's kind of born out of the fact of I suppose when we first started meeting back as a group maybe 5-6 weeks ago, I suppose Brian, his management team, I suppose along with the county board, have put certain protocols in place for us. So be it arrive to training, you get your temperature taken, you get an individual hand sanitizer. Again, there's obviously no talking out in dressing rooms or coming to train on your own. Then when you go to training, if one person needs to use the facility, be it a bathroom, at a time. So I suppose any concern I may have had or other players may have had in our own camp, I suppose we're definitely lessened, if not squashed, maybe going back to the first week of training. Everything has just been so professionally done from our viewpoint as players, really. But obviously, look, at some players that have raised concerns in the past couple of weeks, and look, at obviously it's very understandable. But personally, from my own point of view, I'm very much happy to proceed with the championship as it is.
That's the most important thing, really, isn't it? That the players do feel safe, and the experts are telling us that the actual act of playing a game of hurling isn't likely to throw up any positive cases. And if you're travelling to the game in your own cars and looking after yourself outside the games, then if you're talking about that level of professionalism which Clare seem to have brought to the table, then I guess that weight is off your shoulders a good bit.
Yeah, definitely. But again, any management or county board can have the best protocols in the country and do everything to the letter of the law, but it's up to the players and whatever individuals are actually at the session or engaging in the matches to carry them out to the letter of the law. There's no point having protocols there if you're not going to follow them. And in fairness to any of our lads, be it management, selectors, lads doing stats, any players, they've done what's been asked of them. I see it myself in the working environment, being in a school, something similar. Each protocol has to be followed by students and staff in order for it to be effective. And look, as you said yourself, it has been said that there's less chance of it, maybe the COVID transmitting from an outside setting rather than an inside setting. So the protocols being put in place, along with that advice of being outdoors, makes it a safer environment, and I suppose makes us, the players, feel a lot safer about participating in the games.
For sure. As a hurler, then, if we can be selfish here for a moment, Tony, I don't think anybody's going to give out to you for that. Your form before the pandemic erupted was fantastic. You were going really, really well in the National League. David Fitzgerald, I think, said you were remarkable in training before the break. As I say, being selfish here for a moment, is there a sense that the pandemic came at just the wrong time for you personally in terms of that form you were showing this year?
No, maybe if I was showing the championship and the championship had closed down, but the league is very much it's kind of there to get lads up to speed. Some lads are up to speed maybe quicker than others. You often see it, some lads might do their own bit maybe in October, November, December before they come back into pre-season in January or February, and look at league form is league form. It's producing in championship is where it really matters. And look at everyone is kind of on a clean slate, if you like. On Sunday, it's kind of a shotgun championship if you want to put a term on it. You know, everyone's maybe got a lead in maybe 6-7 weeks, and I think it's trying to get the balance right in those 6-7 weeks between getting lads to tip-top shape and then trying to have that trade-off. Well, I don't want to overcook lads and have them tired or maybe fatigued going into Sunday. So it's whichever team can hit that balance correctly into the championship probably going to have the biggest advantage for whichever game or however long it continues.
I can only imagine, because there isn't any sort of feeling your way into this year's championship. Not that you could ever do that in the round robin in Munster in previous years, but the fact that you've got two competitions on the line here on Sunday only adds to this idea that this is very much do or die.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose look at it's a Munster quarter final. There's also the element of the doubling up with the league as well. But it's very much probably from our own camp. It's very much a Munster championship quarter final. That's the way we're looking at it. I suppose you have an extra bonus of a league title maybe at the end of it for the winner. But yeah, look at it. It's a strange way to lead into a championship. I suppose with the uncertainty that was probably cast around in maybe the last 10 days or so. But look at we've taken it that it was always going ahead. And as of now, it's going ahead of Sunday. Whatever happens in a week's time or 2 weeks' time is no probably relevance to us in terms of looking forward to the weekend.
You look at some of the players that are going to be missing this weekend. There's a lot of star Clare forwards that won't be taking to the pitch on Sunday afternoon. How have you managed to use that as a motivating factor, and the fact that Limerick are going to be bigged up as favourites come Sunday?
Yeah, look at I suppose look at it. It's no secret that Limerick are favourites for Sunday. And look at going in their past form of the last couple of years in championship, they've been excellent. You know, they've been probably one of the standard bearing teams, I suppose, themselves. Tipperary, especially in Munster, those two teams, I suppose, winning Munster championships and All Ireland's the previous 2 years. But yeah, look at we're under no illusion that I suppose the opponent we're up against. I suppose you mentioned there the 2 or 3 guys that were down maybe through injury. Look, that's just the nature of the game. You have to. I suppose next man up really is the attitude within the camp. We've added a few younger lads to the panel since the beginning, I suppose, of the 6-week period leading into championship. A few of them are playing with the under 20s against Tipperary last night, but it's great for those lads to come in. The likes of John Conlon is hurt, but still around the camp doing his own bit of individual training. And yeah, look, we're in a good place. We might be down a few bodies, but. Look, we have plenty more to come in and do equally as good a job, if not a better job. So we've no complaints in that regard. And as I said, everyone within the camp is just hungry and looking forward to get out in the field Sunday.
How do you manage to turn that into a positive then? How do you create that siege mentality within the camp that everybody's writing us off can actually become a positive? Because it is said so often in aftermaths of games where people say, sure, everybody wrote us off. I think you would have a legitimate cause to say that were you to get the business done on Sunday.
Yeah, look, we're under no illusion that we are underdogs for Sunday. And look, that could be justified as well, especially with our performance maybe last year against Limerick. It wasn't up to par in the round robin of the Munster Championship. And but look, at every game is different. You know, you can dwell too much on the past as well, and that can affect how you're going to perform in the future as well. But we certainly have looked at aspects of what went wrong for us maybe last year, personally and collectively as a team. And look, we're going to try and rectify that Sunday. And as I said, it's a different game. We have a different management team behind us, so it's not going to be the same as last year. And you know, look, we're just looking forward to getting out and I suppose imposing any new game plans that we might have developed under new management, and again, new players in different positions and things like that.
What did you identify as the things you could have worked on from last year?
It's probably hard to know. When you look, we're kind of reflecting a game that probably didn't go your way. You're probably looking, first of all, you probably look at yourself and look at your own performance, and I suppose see how you affected the game, or did you affect the game, or you know what improvements could you have made. And look, at personally myself, I've sat down and I have watched it and analysed it, and seen where areas where I can improve. Collectively, there are areas we can improve on that we've worked on for Sunday. I'm not going to disclose what areas we're going to target or work on, but there definitely is areas, especially even when you win, there are areas. But especially after last year, we've learned. Well, I hope we've learned an awful lot from let's say the beatings we took last year in terms of we lost Tipperary and Limerick, especially in Munster.
Can I ask you then, Tony, just as a general point, and maybe this is, I guess, highlighted a little bit this weekend, considering a couple of your other forwards are missing. Like, say, if we were doing a preview before a Clare game, we're always talking about how do you stop Tony Kelly? Who is the man marker in that position, and how do you go so far to stop that specific threat? Is that something that you look at as a hurler very often? Do you think about who is going to be marking me? Who is the opposition going to be? And what specifically and tactically are they going to throw at me?
Yeah, look, it's use. I suppose the more you play, the more you kind of get used to of different approaches teams have. It isn't my first or second year kind of playing, so you kind of get used to it. You play against teams now so often that you invariably come up against the same players that you've marked maybe in league or championship in years gone by. And again, look, you can focus on it to a point. Then obviously there's other areas. Some people you can get too much caught up in it, and then eventually the game will probably pass you by on the day. So you need to focus on yourself, but also keep an eye on it. Okay, how did I get on against this matchup the previous day out, or what are they good at? What might they be weak at? Things like that. And they're probably looking at me no different. What am I good at? What am I not particularly good at? So look, we've come across our players so often that you're marking them at college level, probably marking at schools level, college level, and then in senior level. So yeah, look, you pay attention to it, but not too much attention to it, you know.
How do you manage to use that then to say, kind of think to yourself, how can I be, say, more of a playmaker than a scorer in certain times? Like, is that something that you felt you've added a little bit over the last couple of years, where people might really go after you or double mark you to try and stop you as a scoring threat, but obviously that leaves somebody else free elsewhere in your forward department? Have you got to that level where you're actually thinking one step ahead of the opposition?
Yeah, I think that comes with experience as well. When you first kind of get into it as a young player, you're kind of, when you first maybe get a man marker, it's how do I deal with it? But the more and more I suppose you experience it, the more you have the tools to cope with it. I suppose one thing is, even when you're not in the play, it's all about trying to create space maybe for others around you. Even though you might be marked out of it, there's certain times in the game where you can actually maybe get out of the way. I don't have a better phrase for it. Just get out of the play and create space for other forwards and other players to run into. And the biggest thing then is patience. Biggest thing I've learned is not to go chasing. Not to go chasing the game. You can go chasing it and end up north for the game, and you could cover 11, 12k in a game and have no real impact on it. So it's all about trying to be smart on the ball and try and be smart off the ball. And as you said, try and read it a step ahead, so you kind of create space for others, but you're also kind of involved in the game as well.
Do you prefer playing at midfield or centre forward?
Either or, really. It doesn't really matter too much. Kind of at centre forward, I kind of like to go out around the middle. Anyways, midfield there's probably a bit more freedom at midfield in terms of depending on the opposition. You could often shake hands with a midfielder nowadays in a game, and you wouldn't see him again until you're throwing in the ball again for the second half. It's that much up and down, and depending on the style of team you're playing against. Some teams like to go along with it. Some teams like to run it more. So yeah, there isn't too much of a difference between the half forward line now midfield. The half forward line is seen more now as the graveyard shift now. Similar to football, you're going up and down the field for the 75 minutes.
You're creating the space. That's what you're doing in that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you then finally just about Brian Lohan and what he's brought to things this year? I mean, he was part of the last team to win a Munster title, which I always think is one of the mad aberrations in Irish sport, that Clare have somehow gone 22 years without winning a Munster title. Is that they tapped into a lot with Brian? Is it mentioned? Is it a specific target for this group of hurlers?
No, it's not one thing. I don't think it's been mentioned at all this year. I think it's very much about getting a performance and getting a win under your belt. I think if you look too far forward, about Munster finals or All-Ireland finals, I feel that you kind of take your eye off the ball a small bit. He's very much been a breath of fresh air for us coming in. I had worked with him previously in UL for 2 or 3 years, and the Fitzgibbon Cup teams, again, Ken Ralph and James Moore against selectors with him this year with Clare as well. They also were in UL. So I had a fair idea what his philosophy on hurling was, what he was all about. But I really didn't see it truly until this year, because with a Fitzgibbon team, you're kind of only maybe training once a week. You've so many inter-county, I suppose, players, they can't be training 2 and 3 nights a week. But I've really enjoyed it now since he came in last winter. It's been a breath of fresh air in terms of new approach to playing. It's fresh. It's something new, and obviously he was a legend to so many of us growing up playing for Clare. Obviously we were probably too young to remember any of the 90s, but he was still hanging around in the early 2000s, you know, and he's such a legend in Clare hurling and in hurling in general. And I suppose when he speaks, you literally have to absorb everything he has. He's such a knowledge and a wealth of knowledge of the game. And as I said, he's a breath of fresh air, along with the selectors and the trainers and strength and conditioning lads, giving a new lease of life to some new lads coming into the panel, and some older lads as well that are kind of dwindling down the years, giving them a new sense of life, as well. So.
Yeah, that age thing is really interesting though, Tony, because like for all that you've achieved, I think a lot of people are surprised to be reminded that you're still only 26. Is that something that you think of a lot, or maybe do you use it as a staging post to gauge how well you've done so far in your career? Like when you won your All-Ireland and your All-Star, were you thinking, geez, this is extra special because of the age that I am? And do you then look at your current state of play and say to yourself, there's a lot left in the tank here age-wise for me to achieve more?
Yeah, look, I suppose this is my ninth season hurling with the Clare seniors. Yeah, and I suppose I still am only 26. I'm still hoping there's a few more years left in the tank. But yeah, look, you can look back on what you've achieved. I think that's kind of for later down the road. I think that's for when you're 36, 35 or 36. You might look back. The only thing you'd look back on, I think I look back on, is trying to bring a bit of experience from maybe playing. Maybe not Ireland Final 13. What is the experience from that? What experiences then you gained in from maybe going out in a qualifier the year after, or maybe losing a Munster final? What kind of experiences can you bring? They're the only kind of nuggets of information I look back on. I wouldn't look back and put the feet up and ponder on what you've done. It's kind of what have you done for me lately? Really, kind of that's the way the GAA, that's the way sport is. Because you said, look, I'm 26. You don't know what's down the road. You don't know with an injury. You don't know what's going to happen. A pandemic like we're in now could cost you a year. An injury could cost you a year. So it's all about kind of living in now and trying to capitalise and win as much as you can. You're not going to win every day you go out, but try and put yourself in a position to win is kind of the main goal.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Listen, Tony, it's been great chatting to you. Very best of luck on Sunday and all the different competitions that are up for grabs in that game in Thurles. Chat to you soon.
Yeah. Oh, and how do you feel? He's only 26. You're 26.
What have you done with your life is what you're asking me. Not as much as Tony Kelly, that's for sure. In fairness, he started young, got his All-Ireland, his hurler of the year, gone when he was a teenager, 7 years ago at this point. It's absurd, really, what that Clare team actually did in 2013, and the youth with which they brought to the team. Like, I mean, I think everybody kind of remembers and is charting Shane O'Donnell's years and knows how young he is. But maybe Tony Kelly just felt like the old lad in the team that year, because he wasn't the fella who came on and started the replay and scored a hat-trick. He was the fella who was there all season.
Scored 9 points in every game.
Yeah.
I didn't realise. I mean, I kind of knew, if you were to put a gun to my head, what age I might have. Actually, I don't know. I probably was at 30-ish. Like either side, 29, 28 maybe. But he could still be the best hurler of the country in 7 years' time, and no one will bat an eyelid. They'd be like, yeah, that's about right. Look at the engine he has, look at his striking ability, look at the smarts he has. He's 26, and he's going up against Cian Lynch at the weekend in a championship match. Do or die, knockouts.
Yeah, it's first of all, that fixture this weekend is unbelievably exciting. The fact that we have a straight knockout game, the fact that it's a league game doesn't matter whatsoever, but you've got a Clare team who were going really, really well in the league before everything happened, putting their whole season on the line on one afternoon. Brian Lohan's first year comes down to this on Sunday, and to a different degree as well. It is Liverpool's season on the line, or Limerick's season on the line as well. Well, it obviously is, but like, I mean, if you told Limerick fans that in back-to-back years after winning the All-Ireland, they might have a little bit of disappointment to go through, I'm not sure how well they'd take it. Like, obviously this year's circumstances are so different, and having a round robin in Munster to actually build up a bit of form is the only way you get an accurate representation of where these teams are at. And Limerick will be favourites with everybody fit, but they're added favourites now with no Podge Collins, no Conlon, no Peter Duggan available to Clare this weekend. So they're going to be really, but like Limerick are missing players in their full back line as well. So maybe just tease up to a wild game.
A wild game expected on Sunday afternoon at 3:45. Championship hurling is back. I'm not sure we're all as excited about that as we should be, given everything else that's been going on, to distract ourselves from the big news is that Clare play Limerick in knockout championship hurling this weekend, and some of the greatest hurlers of their generation and potentially of all time are going to be going at it. Two colossus banging off each other. OTBM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Sheahan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads. How are things?
Hello to you in Monaghan, and hello from Brian in Abu Dhabi, he says. And then the best question of the morning is, what island will we send Wexford or Waterford supporters to if they win the hurling? What's off Hookhead? There must be something down there that, like, we send them to Wales. Is that what we do? Just go off to Wales, lads. We'll stick you on the boat from Rosslare. It works for both counties, really, because, you know, who really knows which county Rosslare is in. And
to St. Patrick's.
Ship them off, you know, that'll be perfect. 10 or 12.
The Salty Islands. If you Google island off Wexford, you get Salty Islands.
Right, okay. That'll do.
So they've got two islands, and you can put the Wexford fans on one island, and you can put the Waterford fans on the other island, and then they won't cross-contaminate with one another.
Shane, I don't know if you were aware a little bit earlier on, but we were deciding what would we do if and when Mayo win the All-Ireland football title. And we came up with the conclusion that putting everybody on ACL for a fortnight, you know, you get tested on the way out, and so you're clean by the time you're coming back after a fortnight of debauchery and carousing to celebrate, and everybody can just go out to ACL, and you know that you're going to get COVID if you go out there. But, like, look, we appreciate that everybody needs to celebrate.
Yeah, it's like in Breaking Bad. I think they used we're going to send him to Belize as code for you know, he's going to swim with the fishes essentially. So maybe we could send Mayo fans to Belize to celebrate, perhaps.
Are you calling for the mass murder of Mayo fans?
No, I certainly would not. No, Belize is apparently a lovely country. So they've got hot weather and nice climate in Belize. So
it's supposed to be amazing. Owen was wondering if you had hacked into the Kerry Mafia's WhatsApp group there with the calling for the mass murder of Mayo fans. He's like, that's their territory and you're not allowed to step on it. What will Monaghan fans do if they win All Ireland? How will we seal off the county to make sure that nobody gets in?
Well, you see, you were just talking to Tony Kelly there, and I was thinking about the fact that not too long ago on the hurling show, maybe a year ago, Shane Stapleton had described Clare's 2013 All-Ireland hurling final win as a fluke, to which a lot of Clare fans got in touch and clearly weren't happy about it. They're clearly protective of their All-Ireland. And if Monaghan won an All-Ireland by a fluke, I think if Kildare won an All-Ireland by a fluke, Jerry, you'd agree that you wouldn't really care.
No, I'd be like, what an amazing achievement in the year of COVID. We were the ones who kept our team from getting sick. Screw you lot. That'd be like, come on. I'd celebrate it more.
Yeah, and this year will be tough. Like if Monaghan won an All Ireland this year, it's tough to contain the celebrations, but you have to do it. So everyone will celebrate.
You're being reasonable and factual here. Like we're just assuming that human nature will take over. So like. You were saying the Liverpool fans were congregating outside the Monaghan courthouse. I mean, I don't know,
they had a convoy of vehicles, about 20 or 30 cars deep after they won the Premier League, and they congregated outside the Monaghan courthouse and sang chants for about an hour in the rain. So that was random.
I'm sure that was a very enjoyable experience for everybody involved on that occasion. You also, of course, had the Celtic fans in Donegal.
Yeah.
Driving down the street. I do think that, just to round off the ACL conversation, I mean, they do have some fine homegrown talent to actually provide the entertainment on that night. DJ Killa, import him from Canada, give him a special dispensation to DJ in ACL and let the party start, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah, start it now. For every win that Mayo have, one all-night rave, and then if they win the All-Ireland, just do it for a week.
If he got on a slow boat now from Ontario, would he make it to ACL in time for the celebrations of the All-Ireland final victory? Might need to set off today.
You hear plenty of time for Mayo winning the All-Ireland. Well, that's the obvious.
Shane, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, we'll try and clarify this. Well, we won't clarify it because the GAA have yet to clarify it. But the news that emerged this morning that it's understood only senior inter-county GAA matches will be allowed to proceed under the government's Level 5 COVID-19 restrictions, which of course come into force at midnight tonight. The government had stated no training or matches should take place with the exception of inter-county Gaelic games. It's understood the wording from NEFIT said senior inter-county Gaelic games. So the government have omitted that word, and it's them that really has to clarify this. However, reports this morning suggest that does not include games at minor or under 20 grades. So it would appear the GAA viewed this as allowing both underage and senior inter-county action. And right now it appears that it's not the case. The Leinster Under-20 Hurling Championship was to continue this evening with 3 games. Those games, Antrim against Dublin, Laois versus Carlow, and Offaly to take on Westmeath. While the All-Ireland Under-20 football final between Galway and Dublin had been set for Portlaoise this Saturday. This year's under-20 teams, of course, had also already suffered when GAA moved the minor from under-18 to under-17 grade. So anyone playing under-20 football or hurling this year missed out on a chance to play minor, and now it looks like they may miss a chance to play an under-20 championship as well. Padraig Fanning, the former Waterford hurling boss, tweeting this morning, "This is a mess, total confusion. What is elite sport, inter-county? Have no idea how all this was not sorted and clarified. If senior goes ahead, then no reason for under-20 and minor not to go ahead." So no firm decision yet made with regard to the staging of under-20 and minor fixtures from this evening. So we await further clarification from the GAA. But as things stand, it looks as though only senior inter-county Gaelic games will proceed. So hopefully we'll get some clarification later this morning or this afternoon on that from the GAA themselves.
Exactly, because this is still in the now familiar leak staging of the announcement, and it has yet to be confirmed officially. So there have been some leaks up to this point which have been incorrect and have been subsequently fixed after that particular kite was flown. So we'll wait and see official confirmation of it.
Exactly. Some soccer news. I know you were chatting to Andy Mitten earlier about Manchester United getting their Champions League campaign off to a winning start last night. They beat Paris Saint-Germain 2-1 in the French capital, thanks to a Bruno Fernandes retake and penalty and that Marcus Rashford winner. Manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was delighted with his players' performances, particularly that of young defender Axel Tuanzebe.
Axel been out for 10 months or something. So to put a performance up like this against Neymar and Mbappe, I have to say he's almost surprised us as well.
And United's match winner, Rashford, was delighted with the team's overall performance.
Yeah, it's a good performance, but also a performance where we have a lot to build on. You know, I always believe in the team, and I think as players, it's important to believe in the system that the manager chooses us to play. And you know, today we did that fantastic. When we defend like that, man to man, I think we can do great things.
Chelsea's tie against Spanish side Sevilla at Stamford Bridge finished goalless. Barcelona were the big winners of opening night, beating Ferencváros 5-1. Lionel Messi scored in a joint record 16th Champions League season, and 17-year-old Pedri netted his first senior goal. The other game in Group G saw Juventus win 2-0 away to Dinamo Kiev. Tonight, Liverpool begin their Group D campaign without the injured Virgil van Dijk away to Ajax. Joel Matip is out too after also picking up an injury in the Merseyside derby at the weekend. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp says it shouldn't be an area they'd expect to be short in.
We went into the season with 3 centre-halves plus Fabinho as a cover plus young kids as cover. That's usually quite a good number. As a football club, it's difficult to have 4 world-class centre-halves where immediately it's on one side pretty expensive, on the other side one of them doesn't play for a long, long time.
Manchester City, still looking, of course, for their first ever European Cup, begin their Group C campaign tonight with the visit of Porto to the Etihad. Both of those games involving English teams kicking off at 8 p.m. this evening. Reading are 3 points clear at the top of the championship table this morning. They remain unbeaten after a 1-0 victory at home to newly promoted Wickham last night, who are still to register a point. Former leaders Bristol City lost 1-0 to Middlesbrough, their first league defeat of the season. Drogheda kept their automatic promotion hopes alive last night. They came from a goal down to win 3-1 away to 10-man Galway United in the SSE Electricity First Division. That win moves Drogheda to within 2 points of leaders Bray Wanderers. Waterford have suffered a major blow with just 10 days until the start of their Munster Hurling Championship campaign. Captain Padraig Mahoney will be out for the rest of the year with a knee injury. It's believed the Ballygunner man sustained the problem in a challenge match against Wexford last weekend. Waterford play Cork in the Munster semi-finals on Halloween. The British and Irish Lions will play Japan for the first time in a one-off test match at Murrayfield next year. The game will be played on June 26th and will be part of a warm-up schedule ahead of 3 tests in South Africa. It's a rare chance for fans to see the Lions play close to home. And finally for me this morning, reports of plans to launch a European Premier League involving Liverpool and Manchester United have been condemned by a leading fans group. According to reports, talks are underway over the creation of this new competition, which it is claimed has the backing of the sports world governing body FIFA, but the Football Supporters Association says it shows billionaire owners are greedy and out of control.
Yep, water is wet. And Owen, you've done a bit of reading about this morning. I had assumed that it was a full breakaway in this instance. These are Florentino Perez's plans, and he's had them a lot over the last 18 months. It's his attempt for a European breakaway, and UEFA have constantly managed to rebuff them, so they're like, no, this is no big deal. But the fact that he keeps coming back and seems this time to have tied it in with some other kind of global FIFA league, I would be a little bit more concerned if I was UEFA.
Yeah, it's not a breakaway in the full sense. It is a breakaway from European competition to form a new European competition that UEFA wouldn't run, and I guess that's their vested interest here, that they feel that this is being coming across as a bit of a grab from Perez, from Liverpool, from Manchester United, from the American owners, as well as you could easily make that connection there as well. And is it a coincidence that this is coming a couple of weeks after Project Big Picture, 1 week after Project Big Picture? Because it does seem that the European Premier League would tic-tac nicely with the peaks and troughs of the Project Big Picture Premier League, with 18 teams, 4 less Premier League games to play, would probably leave you with a bit more of an openness to play games in this competition. You throw in the lack of a Carabao Cup as well in Project Big Picture, and all of a sudden you start to see something that's a little bit cohesive, that's coming from similar sources. And you're right, anybody that has $6 billion to spend on anything at the moment is something you need to be concerned about. If anybody can put up that sort of money, then change is surely afoot. There is going to be blowback from this. The most vociferous is going to be from UEFA, naturally, but FIFA are backing this, so they have a powerful broker in the footballing stakes as well.
Just to go back to our poll, we asked yesterday, did you think the GAA Championship should be played? And the majority of people were against the GAA Championship being played yesterday. This is like obviously people who follow us on Twitter who are sports fans. And the poll is closed now. There's been a 10% swing, so it's gone from negative to positive. People do want the championship to be played. And I think that's kind of reflective of everybody kind of taking 24 hours. So bear in mind that the whole notion of the championship being played was injected into the middle of the conversation about level 5 lockdown, when people were rightly angry about the fact that we're heading into 6 weeks of a hybrid version of the lockdown from the first one that we did to this new version where schools will continue to be open. And it doesn't seem like much has been done to prepare the country for us getting out of it. In the midst of that, there was the why is the GAA Championship being allowed to be played when X business has to close? It makes a lot of sense. If you're a gym owner, if you're a hairdresser, if you're a cafe that has been able to serve people outside and nobody has come back to you looking for contact tracing because they think that they got a case in your business, you're like, well, what the hell? Why is special derogation being made for them? And Tony Holohan hasn't really made the specific case beyond that. We think that it will be good for everybody, and they have managed in international sports to get sports away without causing too much distress to people and without there being some specific cases. So you can make the case both sides. I thought that it was interesting listening to Professor Mary Horgan yesterday on the show, and she was making the case that it's actually relatively safe. The stats and the evidence from the games that have been played over the summer in all sports worldwide are showing that the instances of people being infected in the actual matches themselves are quite small. That's one aspect of the argument. The other aspect is that people are going to go completely mental when their team wins at a county level. And actually, the possibility of it being less than clubs is a hope and an aspiration as opposed to an actual fact. Like, oh, and if Kerry were to win in All-Ireland, if Kerry were to beat Dublin this year, wouldn't we actually see the scenes replicated right across the county as opposed to it being more spread out? It's more spread out because there are more people having those celebrations.
I also think, though, as well, that there has been a culture of sharing videos of absolutely tearing into the people who were involved in the previous celebrations that got the GAA into a lot of hot water. And I think that has an impact. I think that does change the behaviours of people in the next couple of weeks, that if there is a big result, they know how certain club fans reacted over the last couple of months. They know that this is unacceptable. They should have known in the first place. But more importantly, they know that there is a possibility that they will get called out on it. And nobody wants to have to shoulder that guilt. I think that there is going to be a degree of change. I don't think it's going to be like there's going to be nothing. I think there's going to be a degree of change. Like, I mean, we also got to remember that we're going to 6 weeks of level 5 lockdown. Is there going to be an opportunity for people to celebrate in those 6 weeks? Probably not. But there's also going to be a couple of provincial finals that might cause celebration, but that's about it. You're not going to have Dublin fans celebrating a Leinster title, and that's the only thing that they're going to have before, 9 weeks' time.
But you might have Tyrone or Donegal fans celebrating an Ulster title, or if Monaghan win it, I presume they'll celebrate an Ulster title. Look, I just think that it's hope rather than a guarantee that everybody's going to cop themselves on, because like we aren't a nation of copped on people. We like to go out and have a good time. We like to party, and like, you know, that's one of the things that makes us who we are, huddled on this island perched at the edge of Europe. Like, we're a very sociable group.
It is hope. It's not.
We like a few drinks, and we like to talk shite. Like, it's who we are.
We certainly do. Like, it would be great if the Ulster title went to a team from Northern Ireland, so we could just point at them and say, you know, it's not our fault. It's the British government's fault. No, that's obviously a joke.
I'm just distancing myself from that last 30 seconds of Eoin othering our northern brethren. Considering I am one of them, Eoin, I feel particularly attacked.
Yeah, but I mean, there's literally not an all-island approach at the moment, so I think I can get away with it. But I am basing it on hope that we will be okay if there's big celebrations that don't happen. It is hope. It's not an expectation that it won't happen. But
yeah,
surely something has changed a little bit, if only just because we have to stay
just on the last point, because we're nearly out of time. We've got to move on to talk about the Ireland-Ukraine game. Like, the notion that stuff has changed. There was pictures from people at the top end of Grafton Street boozing in public at the weekends, like leaving work last Friday. There was like a lot of people out and about having drinks, even though we kind of knew what was coming. And, you know, the Spanish Arch scenes in Galway, it's been the same in Cork. People are out because they need to see each other after months of not seeing each other. And I expect that to continue to happen, irrespective of what happens in lockdown. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody's going to go back to the first 4 or 5 weeks of banana bread and Zoom calls and how grim all that was. I don't know if everybody's prepared to do that, though.
I think that will happen for the next little while. The kind of lethal cocktail is going to be when level 5 is over and there is a big cause for celebration, because that's what's going to happen. Whether it's that's what will happen after an All-Ireland final, is that all of a sudden 2 weeks ago we've dropped down to level 3, level 4, level 2 maybe. It is time to go absolutely apeshit. That is where the cocktail lies. I think for the duration of level 5, we're not going to see as many scenes like that.
All right, I hope you're right. Now, the 2020 GAA Football Championship, the All-Ireland Senior Championships are almost here. And to market Super Value and OTB are calling on GAA fans across the country to support where you're from. Are you the country's most devoted superfan? We wanted you to send us your videos with the evidence of how much of a superfan you and your family are, and there are some great prizes up for grabs. Send us your 20-second videos of a pre-match speech, your pre-match setup at home, or live match reactions. We want to see why your county team means so much to you. Get them into us on social media using the hashtag where you're from, or on WhatsApp 0879 180 180. We'll choose a winner every Friday during the championship. Each weekly winner will land a €200 voucher for Super Value near you, and also the chance to star in Super Value's Superfans series. It's a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. Check out facebook.com/Super Value Ireland for more. Now, here's Risha Littlejohn and Niamh Fahey talking about their trip to the Ukraine and discussing what they learned from facing Germany when they lost 3-0 last time out.
How far do you think you are off challenging these teams?
Look, we've got a wee bit to go, but in terms of how far we've come such a far way since I've been in the squad. You know, most girls now are at professional setups, they're at professional clubs, and that's massive. You know, it's so important to be training every day against good players from all around the world. You know, there's not just English and Irish players in certain teams. There's foreigners from everywhere, which is huge. You know, you get people that are physical, fast, strong. You get people that are more technical. So it's, it's great to test yourself against these kind of players. But, for the women's team, we're making huge steps going forward. But obviously we need to keep pushing, and, the next step will be to compete against Germany and, trying to get results against them. But, I don't think we're too far off it, but all in good time.
Obviously, qualifying for a major tournament would be a massive step for the squad to take, and that's what's on the line on Friday. The fact that a draw would be good enough for you to get second place, is that something that can be a little bit dangerous, where you're kind of stuck in between how to approach the game?
Yeah, look, we know Ukraine. They're a strong team. They've got really good players in their squad, so it's going to be a tough game. To get a draw would be massive for us. I think for us, we need to just focus on, not switching off, not getting complacent. They're very good on the counter. They've got fast players, so we'll be aware of that, and we hope we can deal with it and manage it well. But we're just focusing on going into the game as best prepared as we can. So,
all right, best of luck on Friday.
Cheers.
Rihanna was talking yesterday about how she expects Ukraine to be a lot different. And it's something Vera mentioned earlier in the week about how maybe they underestimated you at Tala last year. Have you had a chance to look at their more recent games? Because that was what Vera said, would be more looking to judge what they've done in their recent performances rather than trying to compare them to last year's game.
Yeah, we've had a look at their recent game against Greece. They won 4-0, and I suppose Kabir is right, where we probably went under the radar a bit against them that early opening game. So we're expecting a lot different challenge this time, but we'll have our homework done as well, and we'll be ready for the challenge.
And now that obviously there's so much on the line on Friday, there's an expectancy, and that brings a pressure. But it must be a nice pressure to have to be in this position, that there is something so big to play for.
Definitely, I think as a player playing at the top level, you want to be in these situations, you want to be in the scenarios, and for me, pressure is a privilege. So it's something everyone is looking forward to, and hopefully we get the right results so we can get to the playoffs. And just on the video sessions, is that something you enjoy as a player? Some players like it, others probably just rather get on the pitch. It depends how long it usually goes on for, and my answer is usually judged off that. But if it's not too long, and they generally don't tend to be, it's something that's a really helpful tool. Can help you, just give you that extra added bit of information that helps you prepare mentally as well before you actually step on the pitch. So yeah, I personally don't mind them, and I think most of the group actually get a lot of benefit from them.
Donald McAleer has been in touch to say greetings from Helsinki, lads. Keep up the good work. Thanks for being with us this morning, Donald. If you're watching from anywhere around the world, give us a shout and we'll let everybody know. So far we've had Helsinki, Abu Dhabi, Florida, Sydney and beyond as well. Even Manchester being in touch with us this morning. So we are talking about the Republic of Ireland against Ukraine. Kick-off is at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I'm delighted to say Lisa Fallon is with us this morning to talk to us a little bit about this and some of the other stuff that's going on in the world of football. Lisa, how are you getting on?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. I think the nervous tension is building up around this, given how excited everybody is for the fact that there's going to be a tournament on our doorstep, and this is an Irish team who we think would do well at a tournament, certainly with the level of build-up and the amount of time they'd have to prepare for it and the confidence they would get from it. So this is the knife edge where it's, it could go horribly wrong if Ukraine win this game. If we get a draw, chances are we're going to finish second. If we win, there's still an outside chance of us qualifying automatically. So as big games go, this is about as big as it can be.
I think this is the biggest game the women's national team have ever had, to be quite honest with you. I think, they've got themselves into an incredible position, but rightly so. I think we've had brilliant players in our squads over the years who never got to a major tournament, and it's such a shame. But this squad of players, I think, is probably our best squad of players ever. And I don't say that lightly because we've had incredible players before. But collectively and as a unit, and with the structures that Vera has brought in, and with Eileen Gleeson alongside her, I think, this is the very best opportunity we've ever had. And, we're in a fantastic place in the group. But at the same time, Ukraine is going to be a really, really tough game. I actually co-commentated on the first game in Dublin, the 3-2 game. And I think, the musings from the camp saying that the Ukraine probably underestimate them, I think are bang on. Ireland were 2-0 up in that game. Ukraine got back into it. And, we probably saw a little bit more after we went 2-0 up. We probably saw a little bit more of what the Ukraine are about. And certainly their performances recently would indicate that they've improved as well. And this game is not going to be a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination.
Lisa, a lot of Ireland football fans coming to the women's team for the first time over the last 6 months or so, they'll have seen that game and they might have seen the Germany game. For new fans coming, what do we expect? What style of play? What's our formation? And if this is the best squad we've ever had, who should they be looking out for?
Yeah, I think we've got some really, really exciting players, particularly in the forward division. We've got the likes of Denise O'Sullivan, who traditionally plays her football in the States, but she's currently on loan at Brighton in England, and she's playing there alongside Rihanna Jarrett, who is a striker. And Rihanna has come from Wexford. So Rihanna is a player who has had an incredible story. She's done her ACL 3 times. She's come back. She's now in her mid-20s, in the prime of her career, and she's absolutely flying. She's been top scorer in the Women's National League, and she's been scoring regularly. She actually scored in the last game against Ukraine, so she scored the second goal. So Rihanna Jarrett is a player to watch, and she's made the move in January this year over to England, to Brighton, and it was her first time really to move into professional football. So with my team in England there in pre-season, we actually played Brighton in a pre-season friendly, and Rihanna played brilliantly. She played the first half, and it's the best shape I've seen her in. She looks really, really fit. She looks really sharp. You can see the strength training that she's doing on a day-to-day basis, and also the quality of the player that she's training with now is bringing her game on massively. She's playing alongside a player called Inessa Kagman, and she's a Dutch international player, and she plays in the kind of number 10 role at Brighton. So Rihanna having the opportunity to play with players of that caliber and train alongside those every day has brought her game on massively from where she was at the end of last year when we played Ukraine here in Dublin. So and also the quality of the players, like Katie McKay plays for Arsenal. Katie's an incredible player, plays as a left winger, very fast, very dynamic, incredible set piece deliveries, will score a goal from all sorts of ranges, as we saw for Arsenal at the weekend. She pinged a beauty with her left foot into the far corner of the goalkeeper's net. So she's lethal from set pieces. Her deliveries are excellent. And we are a very fast, dynamic, counter-attacking team. We have players who like to get into the space behind, run at players, take players on, really, really attacking. But then in defence, we've got really solid players, the likes of Diane Caldwell, Louise Quinn, and Niamh Fahey, who you've just spoken to there. So those 3 players are absolute stalwarts in defence. And they're also strong girls too, big, tall, excellent in the air. Diane and Louise are lethal from set pieces. So if you get those deliveries right, they're also another avenue that we can score from. But generally what Vera has probably done is she shored us up structurally in terms of our defensive structure, so that the players are all really well connected, and that they have a structure, know their roles. And then once we establish ourselves in the game, we have those opportunities to counter-attack into. In the Ukraine game, they tended to play quite a high line and came and played against us and left themselves quite vulnerable. And that was where we got massive opportunities. So I would expect that we won't get that space in behind. I don't think Ukraine will play as high up the pitch as they did in Tala. And they will ask different questions of us. But we've got a really exciting, dynamic, attacking team when we're in possession, and fast players who can get in behind and love to go 1v1. But then structurally, and from a defensive point of view, we've got some really good, solid, experienced players who are, can marshal that area of the pitch really well for us.
Jarrett was obviously leading the line on her own very much against Germany, as many of us expected it the last day. But the previous day out against Montenegro, it looked at times, Lisa, like Ireland were playing 2 up front. What do you expect them to do on Friday?
I think it really depends on how people are training. Vera is very much of the mindset that she'll pick players who are in form and who are training really well. So she will allow that to an extent to dictate who's going to play. Amber Barrett's been in great form over in Germany recently as well. So she is definitely going to be in the thoughts, and it'll be an interesting one to see what way she does line up. Traditionally, if we would go with the 4-3-3, we've got the likes of Denise O'Sullivan and Rusha Littlejohn, who can play as the 2 attacking midfielders in behind. And Denise as well, she's so solid that she can drop in and play in the holding midfielder or as that 8 who will be a defensive midfielder and then add to the attack and go and break the lines. So I don't think she'll move away from the 3 in the middle. So whether she goes with a 3 or a 5 at the back, depending, to try and get the extra outlet from the wing backs, and go with the 2 up front, she could certainly do that. Or she could go with the more traditional shape that we've tended to play, which is with the 4-3-3. Because I think we definitely have to respect Ukraine, but we don't want to respect them too much. We have a very, very good team. And for me, on paper, when you look at the Ukraine team and the standard of the leagues that those players are playing in versus the standard of the leagues that our players are playing against, in, you know, man for man, for me, or woman for woman, we are a better team on paper. And collectively, I think, and bear in mind, the Ukraine game was Vera's first game in charge as well. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, I remember after that game, she was talking about the players being tigers and being, you know, so relentless and having that heart and fighting spirit. And it was right. But Ireland have that in spades. But now we have a bit more structure and that. So, you know, I think Vera will have her homework done really, really well. And whether we go with the 2 or the 3 up top, I think we'll be, you know, we'll be well, but we'll also be able to adapt and change it during the game as well, if need be.
Like, not to put the burden of responsibility on one person here, but I guess part of that dilemma between those two formations you mentioned is down to Katie McCabe. And I'd just be keen to get your take on whether or not she's better on the right of a front 3 or a bit deeper, either as a right midfielder or technically as a right wing back. Is she better coming onto the play or better with her back to goal?
Well, Katie would be on the left. Katie's left-footed, so she plays left back for Arsenal. Has done really all season and last season. So it was an interesting move. Arsenal just had a need there, and they put her in there. But what Katie does is she brings an incredible attacking dimension. For me, I think Vera sees Katie more as an attacking player. And she prefers her higher up the pitch because she is that outlet for us, and she does have that massive quality of cross. It really depends, you know, and she's a really good attacking outlet. So for me, I think Vera's preference is to play Katie higher up the pitch, and Katie is so dynamic, and she's so clever. But then if she has to track back and do that extra bit of work, you almost get an extra defender with her in those moments of the game when you're out of possession. And if the opposition fullback comes, Katie gives you that extra dimension as well. So Katie can play either role. And from what I've seen of her with Arsenal over the last, really since September 2019, you know, I'd have no fears playing her in either position. But if you're really going to go for the game, I'd play her higher up the pitch.
Question about the goalkeeper as well. Marie Horan out through injury, and she's been first choice. Grace Maloney's playing well for Reading at the moment. What's the like? Is it a straight swap? There's no real debate here, or is there actually a debate about who will start in goals for Ireland, do you think?
Yeah, I think there is a debate. I think Courtney Brosnan had been certainly in Vera's thoughts earlier in the campaign and stuff. So Courtney wouldn't be ruled out. The only problem is Courtney didn't start for West Ham the last weekend. So, you know, and Grace has been absolutely flying for Reading, as you said. She had a brilliant performance against West Ham a couple of weeks ago, and she saved a penalty. So she's in really, really good form. And Vera does like to pick players who are in form. So I think she does have a decision to make there between Grace and Courtney Brosnan, and I think that is a definite decision that has to be made. Obviously, with Mari being out, dislocated her finger a couple of weeks ago, so that is a bit of a blow. But I think, you know, with both Courtney and Grace both playing in the WSL, and you think of the quality of the players that they're coming up against in that, you know, they're up against the likes of Sam Kerr, they're up against Vivian Miedema, they're up against Beth England, you know, all the top strikers in Europe and the world. You know, Sam Kerr is the Australian captain, one of the best players in the world. She's at Chelsea. Vivian Miedema has the most ridiculous goal scoring record for her age. She broke the WSL scoring record with 50 goals in 49 games last weekend. She's an incredible player, and she's you know, Holland's top scorer as well. Lit up the World Cup and the European Championships a couple of years ago. So our goalkeepers are up against really, really good players on a weekly basis. So they're certainly getting to work out and play against top players. So for me, whether she goes with Grace is probably the goalkeeper that's more in form at the moment. Whether she goes with Grace or Courtney, both of them would be, you know, solid enough and you know, would have the capacity to play in a game like this.
Lisa, recently the club that you were with in England and yourself issued a press release saying that your relationship had come to an end as a result of the pandemic. It must be unbelievably disappointing because, you know, everybody should be familiar at this stage with how long you've soldiered to get to the point where you finally got fully charged of an outfit, and for the pandemic to take it away from you must have been very annoying.
Yeah, look, it was rough. It was rough, but I suppose when I took the job initially, yes, obviously I've been building towards it for a long time, and I wasn't sure that it would ever come, the moment, but when it did, I loved it. You know, it was really good. Enjoyed every moment of it, getting that opportunity to be on the pitch and start to put direction on things. And you know, there was a lot of work that needed to be done at the club. And, you know, I was probably 4 or 5 months into that work, initially, albeit by Zoom, because we were under lockdown at the time. But yeah, the problem was my family are in Dublin and the team are in London, and trying to commute fly 4 times a week. And I've vulnerable members in my family at the moment. And it was just became really difficult I'm feeling that you're putting people at risk. And obviously then the question of, if there was a lockdown, where would I be? Would I be at home with my family in the event of another lockdown, or would I be in England? And, you know, there comes a point where you just, listen, I've given football an awful lot over the years. I've made huge sacrifices, and my family have too. And just right now, I just felt that, and you know, it's always going to be family first. It's always going to be family first. And listen, the beauty of football is there's always another game. And was I gutted? Absolutely, I was gutted. And in fairness, the club, when we had the initial conversations, they were, look, we'll give it another week. We'll see, can we find a solution? But it just got to a point where, you know, the travelling was becoming a problem, you know, and I just got to the point where I had to make the decision. And the decision, when you look at all the years of experience and what the potential is there and what we're doing and the amount of work we've got done and the buy-in from the players and how close we are and all of that, and, you know, all those things, I had to strip it all away and just go, right, who needs me right now more? And the answer was my family. So that just made it a straightforward decision, made the decision. And, you know, it was a tough decision, but it was the right decision. And, you know, like I say, when this all passes and we get everybody through it and we get through it on the right side, football will always be there. And, you know, I think I'm young enough to be able to go back in. And but right now, I just have to be based in Ireland. I have to be able to get to my family quickly at the moment if needs be, and so being home is where I need to be.
Well, listen, I've no doubt that there'll be another job opening up soon enough for you. Lisa, great to have you with us this morning, and thanks for helping to preview that game on Friday. Everybody's very excited about it now. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Mind yourselves.
Lisa Fallon there giving us some thoughts on Ireland against Ukraine, which is due to take place 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and so much riding on it. You can read more on the WSL from Emma Carroll weekly on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com to keep you up to date with what's going on there. That's it from OTB AM this morning. Thanks to everybody for you guys watching around the world. Great to get your messages, and plenty more debate to come about the merits or otherwise of playing the games at the weekend in the GAA Championship. Stay tuned to otbsports.com for full confirmation when it comes through about the under-20 and the minor championships, and see what's going to happen there. Leaders' questions today from noon on OTB Sports Radio is Chris Meyer in conversation with Stuart Lancaster. OTB Gold is Brian O'Driscoll meets Isa Nasewa. Our Legends interview is Matt Holland. Retro panel, Trying Not to Think About It with James O'Connor, Enda McGinley and Colin Byrne. And OTB Gold is Michael Eoin talking about his life after football with Joe Malloy from 6 o'clock tonight. If you've missed anything, catch it back. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast. Tell your mates about that. It's time-stamped as well, and that's the best place to get it, is the OTB Sports app. See you tomorrow. Best of luck.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.